So we are now live. Uh, Hello everyone, I am Apresh Mishra from India CSR. Welcome to 11th edition of CSR Leadership Summit. I'll just take you through what we have done in the past and what we are supposed to do uh, in the years to come. India CSR network, as you may know, it has started 11 years back. It was founded by Mr. Hussein Kumar, a Chhattisgarh-based journalist and social worker, worked in media, corporates, NGOs, helped a lot of organizations, and helped nurture a lot of social initiatives in the past. Our objective was to serve the corporate sector and also the society and planet by reporting on trends, practices, success stories of corporate social responsibility and sustainability initiatives. Way back in 2013, after this Companies Act came into being, India CSR started focusing more on the 2% of the CSR because it led to becoming an ecosystem of the CSR professionals and the leaders from civil society organizations. Over the past, we have published more than 20,000 stories from across the country, from Jammu Kashmir to Kanyakumari, from Gujarat to further northeast. CSR Leadership Summit is our annual flagship event, which has over the years attracted leaders from across the spectrum. This edition of CSR Leadership Summit is going to focus on how to build a resilient India in the new normal that the pandemic has posed upon us. We have 6 themes to discuss about during 3 days: agriculture, livelihood, education, skilling, employment, entrepreneurship, nutrition, and public preventive and mental health. Apart from this, we are also going to talk about one session which is CSR visibility of CSR impact, and one session on corpus grants and collaborative philanthropy or social responsibility. And of course, we have inaugural session and valedictory session. Inaugural session today and valedictory session on 16th of January at 5 p.m. It would be followed by a
नहीं हो वो लैपटॉप पे ठीक करना पड़ेगा
it would be followed by India CSR Awards. The award, we are going to felicitate the corporates who have done marvelous job during the year, and also we are going to felicitate the leaders from the corporate social responsibility sector, and also 10 impact leaders who have shown their commitment, shown the leadership to help those affected by the pandemic. And now with this, I would hand over the mic to Dr. Rana Singh to convene this inaugural session. Over to you, Dr. Rana Singh. Dr. Rana, can you hear me?
सर वॉइस नहीं आ रही मेरे तरफ से प्लीज आस्क अपरेश जी टू कंटिन्यू
Okay.
प्लीज आस्क अपरेश जी टू कंटिन्यू मेरे तरफ वॉइस नहीं आ रही सर
I can hear you. We can hear you, sir.
सर प्लीज आस्क अपरेश जी टू कंटिन्यू वॉइस नहीं आ रही है सर
Your voice is coming. You please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Afternoon to one and all. I take this opportunity to extend my warm welcome on my personal behalf as well as on behalf of and all the esteemed panelists. It's indeed been a great pleasure to interact with all of you on this special occasion and at the outset of the entire team who has worked out such a wonderful opportunity for all of us to talk about this special and contemporary event in the domain of CSR. We have been talking about resilient India and how the corporate world can leverage this challenge and opportunity together. So it's a great opportunity for all of us, and we are blessed to have with us Professor Colin, who has been kind enough to spare out of his busy schedule. And it's always a pleasure to listen from the experts from India and abroad, and we are also blessed to have such eminent panelists today. So we'll talk about and set the theme of the entire conference. Now, the challenge ahead of us is to understand how we as corporate world are going to look at it, the challenge of COVID-19 as a challenge as well as an opportunity. So the perspective with which we are looking at the world of CSR and the domain of CSR and the changing perspectives and dimensions. So we as corporate world, we have to understand the changing dynamics, the changing ecosystem, and the changing dimensions of the CSR world in India and abroad, and see how the changing scenario in the current situation of pandemic and post-pandemic, the major responsibility in front of all the stakeholders of the CSR domain is to understand what are the biggest challenges and opportunities standing ahead of us, and how we as corporate and academicians and researchers can come together and help in the process of policy making with the government, as well as to formulate our strategies and action plans so that we are able to become successful in the changing scenario. Now, we have multiple dimensions to look at and how to strike a balance. Now, the government has a perspective to formulate rules, laws, and regulations, as well as the corporate world has to look forward to focus on maximizing the compliance dimension. Now, we all know that the current situation of pandemic has forced most of the stakeholders to work online as well as to work from home. Now, in such situations, the biggest challenge of the CSR domain was to focus on having the impact visible in the society, because we had very little opportunity to work on the ground level. So now, the biggest challenge when we talk about CSR domain, we wish to look forward to measure or assess the social impact of the various CSR programs. Now, when the majority of the stakeholders in the CSR domain did not have the opportunity to work and perform in the field, so in that situation, it's very important for us to understand how are we going to measure the impact. And the majority of the people in the CSR domain did not get the right opportunity which they could have otherwise had when they would have had a free hand to implement their envisioned goals, objectives, and they could have implemented their entire plans in the real situation. So when we talk about resilient India, we can see that the economy has started witnessing the upward trend, which we call it as the north trend. And most of the sectors of the economy have started performing in a better way. If we look at the automobile sector, if we look at the GST collections, and we look at all other sectors of the economy, most of them have started witnessing a positive trend. But when we look at the positive trend of the economy, the simultaneous responsibility of the corporate world also increases, that we have our own corporate social responsibility and to focus on maximizing the social impact with the stakeholders in the arena, in the region where we are operating. So two major focus areas. One is to implement the original plans and to accomplish previous plans and policies. And second is to focus on maximizing the compliance with the government rules and regulations. But the third challenge is, while we are achieving our envisioned goals and objectives and ensuring compliance to the corporate world, means our own plans and policies, as well as to the compliances of the government sector. Now, the third major responsibility is to have visible and measurable impact in terms of the overall functioning. So with these words, I would like to look forward to listen to the eminent panelists and other stakeholders available today. And I wish you all a great interaction and meaningful culmination of various thought processes. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day ahead. And I wish you a great conference interaction. Thank you so much. Now, may I please take this opportunity to invite Rusanji to take the discussions forward. Over to you. Rusanji, please.
Rusenji, please unmute.
So, namaste, good afternoon to all distinguished guests and speakers, participants. So, I feel great honor to welcome you all at this 11th edition of India CSR Leadership Summit and Awards. We are here for next 3 days to learn from the best minds of the CSR world. I particularly welcome our chief guest, Professor Colin Colson Thomas, who is also our global brand ambassador and advisor to India CSR group, and Professor Rana. So the 11th edition of India CSR Leadership Summit is India's flagship forum and prominent get together of these corporate and civil society leaders. So this year theme of the conference is building a resilient India in new normal. So I'm thankful to each and every one of you, your time and moreover commitment to the cause of this social responsibility in much challenging and unprecedented times for humanity at large. The corporate social responsibility, although evolved as a regulatory practice in India in recent times, is more a mindset, and this I have felt during interaction with you all, including some of the best CSR practices following organization of the country. I am glad to see that Irrespective of the sector and role, all CSR expert leaders and friends in CSR India share the philosophy of transforming human lives with collaborative action. Thank you all so much for such a wonderful commitment and support. So we at India CSR tried to build a transparent and encouraging ecosystem that can drive good uh, through responsible corporate action. For that manner, if you refer to any of our initiative, whether it is award, recognition, or competition, you will find that a serious scientific process that we adopt to recognize the best. We believe that the business of strengthening social responsible business is not business as usual. During the time of COVID 19, we all have proven that despite diversity, Indian CSR community remains united for the cause of humanity and development. We have witnessed some of the most generous and humanistic CSR initiative in our country during the time of this COVID crisis. So I cannot name any as the list is vast and long, but I appreciate each and every one present for such a great display of wholehearted commitment when the country needed it most. Salute to all the CSR warriors. The effective CSR management requires continuous learning and capacity building through updated knowledge creation and dissemination in the field. Keeping this at focus, we are planning to launch CSR Management Case Development Initiative with selected partners, industry, and universities. We have also realized the need for capacity building in CSR management and partnered with the university and global experts in the field. Last year, we offered one executive program on CSR with the IIHMR University, Jaipur, which is one of the India's premier university in healthcare management research. I'm happy to announce that University Grants Commission India approved our joint postgraduate diploma in CSR and sustainable development program with IIHMR University in National Skill Qualification Framework, in which we are strategic industry partners. This is the first time when the program is being introduced in the country with CSR management as recognized higher level skill. This is the beginning. We are also partnering with the many leading think tanks globally to bring the best of CSR capacity building initiative in India through our recently launched initiative Wisdom in Practice Education, WIPE. So I am grateful to all of you for your continued and unconditional support to our initiative always, and look forward to a continued journey together for good of society and humanity at large. Thank you once again and welcome to this India CSR Leadership Summit and Award. I feel great pleasure to inform you that ninth India CSR Award will be presented on 16th January evening during this prestigious summit. I truly believe in socially responsible India. Thank you so much and Jai Hind. Over to you, Dr. Rana. Dr. Rana and Apresh.
Thank you very much, Rusanji. It was indeed a great experience listening to you once again after a prolonged period. Now, I would request Mr. Apresh, are you around? May I please request Apresh Mishraji to take it forward, please?
Uh, I take great pleasure in inviting Professor Colson Thomas to deliver keynote. He is the star of our event, and I hope we would be greatly benefited by his keynote. Professor Colson Thomas, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Presh, and thank you, Dr. Rana, and thank you also, Rusun, for organizing this event and inviting me. And I was excited to hear of the approval and the new forthcoming program, which is a great achievement. And I think India's CSR is certainly a role model in terms of the collaboration and cooperation that we all need to achieve. Also, I'd like to say greetings to all of you from the United Kingdom, where we've had some frosty days. And at the moment, I'm in amongst those trees on the left-hand side of the image. If we start with the challenges facing mankind, a feature of them and the current situation is that we don't just face the challenge of the COVID-19 pandemic, we face multiple interrelated challenges that we all share. And they include environmental degradation and the loss of biodiversity, the overexploitation of natural capital, the challenges of sustainability, global warming and climate change. But with all of these challenges, as Professor Rana has said, come associated opportunities. And arguably some of the opportunities are the most exciting opportunities that we've had for many centuries. But addressing COVID-19 and these other interrelated challenges and associated opportunities, they create particular problems for organizations and societies. That they have certain features in common. They all have consequences for multiple activities, and they cannot be given to just one organization, one function, or one government department to address. Collaboration and collective effort is required. And in dealing with them, there may be winners and losers. There will be vested interest to confront. People may want to hang on to what they have, preserve their advantages, and regain what they have lost during the pandemic. But going forward, the lower growth rates and higher costs that may be necessary for sustainability, they tend not to attract votes. So they're a particular challenge in democracies. If I say a few words about the challenge of COVID-19, because my background is involved serving on a number of boards, concerned with public health, and one in particular has a crucial role to play in terms of viruses and their control. Viruses evolve and they mutate as required to ensure their own survival. And we've seen the mutation in the UK, which has led to yesterday being the highest level of deaths that we've ever had. Our contemporary societies are particularly vulnerable to respiratory and other diseases. Population movements increase exposure to disease and contagion, and we cannot be complacent. In the past, for example, the Europeans going to South America wiped out as many as 90% of the existing population. And our encroachment on more of the natural world increases our exposure to new sources of risk. Cities, crowds, and public transport, sporting occasions, they all increase the risk of contagion. And modern lifestyles can increase our vulnerability to disease. And throughout the whole of our experience with COVID-19, particularly in democracies, there is a conflict, there is a tension between what individuals would like to do in terms of their preferred lifestyles and the social responsibilities that are required to actually control the virus. There are many other challenges relating to COVID-19. There are significant cultural differences between countries that condition the extent to which people comply with government requirements and guidance and restrictions, and particularly in countries like the UK and the US, where people are very individualistic and like to do their own thing. it's particularly challenging. And we have to get a balance between and find a way of reconciling freedom and control of the virus. We need to balance, as has already been said today, the imperatives for health and saving lives, and the considerations for the economy and people's livelihoods. There's a challenge of speeding up approvals for vaccines and treatments when time is required to assess consequences and build confidence. And we've seen during the pandemic exciting innovations in terms of the speed with which vaccines have been improved, mainly by undertaking activities in parallel rather than sequentially, which you would need to do in other times, because obviously a private company doesn't want to spend money until it knows from the previous stage that the prospects are looking good. Confidence is particularly important, and one of the key factors is getting a balance and an alignment between trust, confidence, and compliance. Because if people trust what is being said by public authorities and they have confidence in the measures being taken and the advice that's been given, they're much more likely to comply. And in the longer term, across a number of the challenges we face, there's a challenge of how do we internalize externalities in our decision making, whether it's the decision making of individuals or companies. And there's also a looming challenge around the world, not just for India or the UK and the US, the high levels of public and private debt that have actually been accumulated, and how we share the costs of actually paying those off. In terms of public health crises, there are distinctive challenges. How do you manage high impact but low probability risks? If you're a decision maker with a limited budget, there's always a tendency to put off the measures that you need to take to actually deal with something like a pandemic, which would have a huge impact on your society. But in normal conditions, you feel there's a low probability of it happening. If you're a decision maker, you often need to handle diverse opinions, and scientific advice may be split. You need to reconcile the advantages of a central overview and central direction with the need for local engagement and action. People are always asking for consistent messaging, but you're in an evolving situation, and sometimes you need to change the emphasis and change the priority. There's a frustration of responding to fake news, whether it's about the potential dangers of taking a vaccine or disputing a particular measure and its effects. You need to respond to social isolation guidance, and that's always an issue because many people don't. Within most societies, there will be an element of the population that does not socially isolate. They continue as before. Vaccine take-up rates, may be influenced by fake news, and you need a certain proportion of the population, to take the vaccine before you get anywhere close to herd immunity. There's a risk of fatigue with restrictions. Some people will only put up with restrictions for so long. And then there's the issue of how do you cope with the people that transgress? In crisis decision-making that we've seen, particularly over the last year, the pressures that we all face when we have to take decisions in a crisis, whether it's a government, whether it's on the board of a company, there's lack of time. You may be lacking current and accurate information. There's a challenge of reacting to developing events, but at the same time, you need to address the root causes. And some people are better able to cope with decision-making in crises than others. Keeping a decision-making team tight can actually help you to get decisions through, but that can complicate the challenge of securing wider engagement. The shortage of time can put pressure on people to reduce inputs and oversimplify the issues. And that creates a risk of significant and valid viewpoints being ignored or excluded. And the lack of diversity and challenge can result in groupthink. If you're doing the right thing, the consensus that emerges can be beneficial. But if you need to change direction and you're doing the wrong thing, then groupthink can be absolutely incredibly dangerous and fatal. So socially responsible leaders, one of the key things they need to do is ensure that the relief that you sometimes get when you finally get a consensus in a crisis situation on a way forward is to make sure that that doesn't lead to a reluctance to review positions or transform or change direction when you need to. Socially responsible leaders make sure that we maintain our focus on socially responsible outcomes while coping with vested interests. You need, if you're a responsible leader, to represent absent voices, and that's particularly important in relation to environmental challenges, that we need to take account of the interest of future generations, other species, and the environment. One also needs to distinguish between awareness, understanding, commitment, and action. Many more people may be aware of a challenge than actually understand its implications and some of the issues that need to be resolved. Even fewer may commit to doing something, and fewer still may actually undertake beneficial actions. So in all of this, facing the combination of challenges in front of us, what role should the CSR community play in ensuring socially responsible outcomes? And achieving a responsible recovery is a key priority at the moment. And to get there, we need a combination of things. We need shared purpose, agility, flexibility, cohesion, trust, responsible and caring leadership. And above all, we need resilience. So this event, with its focus on creating a more resilient India as we go forward, is absolutely, on the button in terms of its timing, because we need individual, family, organizational, community, network, and social resilience. And resilience is about coping, responding, and rebounding. But in relation to COVID-19, we want to build back better. We need to go beyond just trying to get back to where we were. And we need to ask, some key questions about the nature of the recovery that we want to bring about. Were our previous activities and lifestyles sustainable? Can we turn adversity and tragedy into an opportunity to move towards a more sustainable future? Should we look beyond a new normal? Can we evolve, transition, and transform to a more sustainable and more inclusive model of development that is less environmentally damaging? And incremental improvement and going back to where we were before is not enough. We need innovation, and we need social innovation as well as business and economic innovation. We need to create and adopt simpler, healthier, and less stressful lifestyles that safeguard natural capital. And there's a huge opportunity, particularly for the CSR community, that can play a vital role in going forward, because crises like the COVID-19 pandemic can create a common and shared exposure to risk, threat, pressure, and stress. We've all been through a grim year, and that common experience can cause people to come together And cooperation and collaboration is needed to achieve sustainable development goals. They cannot be achieved by governments alone. They cannot be achieved by particular organizations acting on their own. They need collaboration and partnerships. And cohesion and consensus are important for holding people together, but going back to the importance of innovation and doing things differently going forward, while cohesion and consensus are good things, we don't want a dull uniformity. Now, some collectivist societies have appeared more successful than individualistic ones at coping with COVID-19. But as well as collective effort, we need individual initiative, inspiration, and imagination. And we need to inspire responsible innovation. And we need diversity, challenge and questioning, and experiment and exploration if we're to bounce back to a better place. We need socially responsible innovation, enterprise, and entrepreneurship. And we need all of you. And think about what you can do and what we can all do as a CSR community to build socially responsible innovation into the purposes, visions, values, goals, and objectives of organizations. And remember, as we do this, your CSR roots. And remember also the ancient wisdom of India and the importance that it puts upon the basics and the environmental basics of air and water. And remember our responsibilities to future generations. I believe that living in harmony with the natural world can offer hope for the future. And the things that you can do, we can all do as a CSR community, can shine lights into dark places. For my final slide, you saw earlier the front of where I am, amongst the trees looking out over the river. This is a back view, and it shows a rainbow that I saw one day on walking home. And I remember as a child, walking across the Cornish cliffs and the downs and the moors, looking for the end of the rainbows that I would see in the sky. But they would be elusive. I would never actually get there. And as I've grown up, life has taught me to avoid the pursuit of goals that are elusive. Don't go after things that don't exist. And throughout history, you've seen many examples of how communities of people, small numbers of people, have had a huge impact. They've been able to create religious, political, social, economic, and business revolutions. So collaboration and partnership for sustainable social development, the areas that we're looking at over the next 3 days, are absolutely crucial to building back better. So together, let's build a sustainable and a socially responsible future.
Dr. Rana is facing some technical difficulties. So for the time being, I am here. Is there any question from the participant to Professor Colin?
Mr. Paresh, please go ahead. I think there are no questions. I think there's one question: how to achieve sustainable development goals. Professor Colin, sir, would you like to please address?
Yeah, in terms of how to achieve sustainable development goals, if we look at them across the piece, one of the issues that I was raising is the fact that as we were going on before, COVID-19, in each year, we're basically using up 2 years worth of natural capital. And in many crucial areas, the world has a finite limit, to the amount of certain rare materials. So there's a real prospect, if we carried on as before, of future generations, being rummaging in rubbish dumps, for thrown away mobile phones and things like that, so that they could scavenge and actually get the vital materials needed to do the basics. In other words, they may not have anything like what we have, and they'd be doing that in a much degraded environment and with a very hostile climate. So we need to change. So sustainable development, economic growth, as we were doing before, I honestly believe is unsustainable. So in terms of going forward, we do need to change, and we do need to do things differently. And it is something that government alone cannot do. It can pass laws, it can pass regulations, but it cannot produce that innovation. Governments don't produce vaccines, which are a possible way out of COVID-19. That comes from private companies. So innovation in the corporate world, making sure that the government, the regulations, the rules, the laws don't inhibit innovation, enterprise and entrepreneurship is absolutely critical. And collaboration and partnership. Again, it's so difficult for individual organizations to have the scale of impact needed to achieve sustainable development goals. We all need to be moving together collaboratively. The collective effort is needed. So we need both collective effort and that individual initiative and inspiration and creativity that creates those innovations. And there's a huge responsibility on companies in particular to get boards not to do the easy things, because there'll be pressure from governments and societies to recover the economic growth that's been lost. But if we go back to the rate at which we're consuming natural capital before, as I've said, the impacts could be disastrous. So boards need to be more responsible. Responsible leadership is absolutely critical. And one of the strongest voices for that, should be the CSR community, because the CSR community is made up of a community of people, a subset of society that understands this, that does want, it's in the DNA of most of my colleagues in CSR, that they want to move forward in a way that's sustainable and more inclusive. So our role in terms of going forward is absolutely critical. And we need to be catalysts, we need to be spokespeople, we need to lobby, and we need to exert our influence. We need to become decision makers within companies. We need to have a closer relationship with boards. We need to join more boards. Get more members of the CSR community into key positions. And Professor Rana, what you were saying and what Rusan was saying earlier, in terms of what CSR India is doing, and like the new program, for example, I think those things are absolutely critical. So let's look at what we can do as a community, because potentially I think we can play a very important role as a catalyst in making things happen.
Thank you so much. May I please request to address the question of Mr. Abhishek? He says, how do you see CSR and employee care coming together? CSR and employee care coming together.
So it's CSR, and the other one is
Employee care, employee care.
what caring for employees.
Maybe in terms of employee welfare, he means.
Oh, in terms of employee welfare, well, obviously our employees, you know, that they're a group of people that we are responsible for, and we can influence and do things for, but they are one stakeholder, and I think you know, we also need to think about our responsibilities towards all stakeholders. You know, and that includes the communities, the societies, the cities, you know, the countries in which we operate. You know, it includes the customers, the suppliers, and I think in terms of all of those people, I think we need to think broadly, and we need to perhaps think more strategically. That you know, sometimes the focus is how can we give good working conditions to employees today, and yet if our company is polluting the environment, you know, is producing sort of emissions that are causing sort of global warming, that then any things that we do today for the few years that we have them to make life good for our employees is going to be wiped out, you know, by the damage that we're doing, you know, to the whole of society and the environment. You know, so we need to get a balance, and perhaps we need to be more strategic, and we need to think more broadly, and we need to think more about the future implications of what we do. So I'm not saying, you know, that in any way we should take our foot off the pedal in terms of things that we can do for employees. But let's, you know, can we raise our sights and actually look at what we can do for other stakeholders and the communities and societies in which we operate. In other words, you know, we may employ, you know, 0.1% of the people may be our employees, but all of them are fellow citizens and are fellow human beings that potentially, and if we all work together, we could do beneficial things for.
Very much, Professor Colin. I have one small additional question. What would be your advice to the strategic planners pertaining to CSR domain in the light of current COVID scenario?
In terms of strategic planning, and it is quite interesting, you know, to what extent can you plan in today's world when there is uncertainty in so many dimensions? I think, you know, we need to move beyond just producing a strategic plan that in a few months' time may become out of date. I think strategic planning needs to give way to an intelligent steering. But as you're steering, you need to know, you know, to what you want to steer. And, you know, so when you face each decision, then you have some criteria for knowing what is the best thing to do. So I think our values and how we see our response, you know, to whom are we responsible and accountable, I think is broadening and trying to, when we putting, whether we call it a strategic plan or strategic objectives or our values or our purpose, you know, I think our core purpose is critically important. You know, we take account of the wider environment. We take account of all stakeholders. You know, we think much more broadly. We think much longer term. You know, we raise our ambitions. And I think, you know, as a CSR community, if I was putting together a strategic plan for a total organization, then, you know, I would be looking at our responsibilities, you know, to all these other groups, you know, going back to the future generations, you know, the other species, the external environment. And if I look within my organization, I say, well, hang on, I've actually got a group of people here. You know, I've got some people that have CSR in their job titles, and I want them to do more than just make sure that we satisfy a requirement that 2% of the net profit is devoted to socially responsible things. You know, why, if I'm a chief executive or on a board, you know, why, how can I use that expertise? You know, how can I use this community to apply their values and what they would like to do to the whole of our operations, you know, to the 100% of the surplus that we're generating, you know, rather than just that 2%. So I think that, you know, that we potentially, you know, have a crucial role to play in the strategic planning of organizations, and a crucial role to play in influencing how they intelligently steer to cope with the uncertain and insecure and changing situation that we all find ourselves in.
Thank you so much, Professor Colin Colson Thomas. It was indeed a great pleasure listening to you and your thoughts about the CSR domain in the changing times. We at India CSR take this opportunity to extend a very warm gratitude and sincere thanks to you for your warm interactions and deep insights. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day ahead. Now,
I thank all of you, every one of you. I'm the one that should be thanking all of you.
Now, may I please request Mr. Apresh Mishraji to take the session forward. Mr. Apresh.
Hello, everyone. The session that I am going to moderate is Together We Can. The past 9 months were terrible. We have never seen this kind of despair before. But there were always amazing stances of hope, and also the people who brought hope for communities, for the people, for the country. And there were lessons that could help us all fail for the future. With me today are Mr. Atul Satija, the founder and CEO of The Nudge, and also the founder of Give India. With me again is Mr. Prashant Prakash, is the chairperson of Vision Group of Startups and also the founding partner of Excel Partners India. Ms. Nagma Mula, she has driven a lot of collaborative efforts in philanthropic domain. She is the president and CEO of the Little Gift Foundation. And last but not least, Mr. Ashish Dhawan, who will be joining in a moment, is a venture capitalist, philanthropist, founder chairperson of Central Square Foundation, and also founder chairperson of Ashoka University. We saw despair, we saw suffering of humanity for the past 9 months. We have some greatest minds and amazing people with us who have raised hope for all of us. That is why we thought we should brought everyone. I stand corrected, Atul. Venkat was the founder of Give India. While there were many people who served within their limits, these 4 amazing people brought the flock together to serve the humanities, serve those, help those affected by the pandemic. To start with, I would like to invite Mr. Prashant Prakash to talk about his journey as someone who brought this VC and startup community together to launch ACT grant along with other people. as to what his journey been, what has been the achievements and learnings for all of us. Over to you, Prashant.
Apresh. Thank you for having me here, and it's great to share the learnings that we have been through with the response that the entrepreneurial community and the investors uh, have done in their response to the pandemic. So this is around the time of the lockdown. We saw a small group of about 1,000 entrepreneurs come together on a Telegram group, and that's when we saw the need for small amounts of capital, which could be catalytic in helping the ideas these entrepreneurs had, these teams had in fighting the pandemic. So a few of us investors came together along with the broader investment banking ecosystem, uh, private equity funds, and other stakeholders of the startup ecosystem to launch a 100 crore grant fund. We got tremendous response, and we partnered with folks like um, Atul here from Give India and Nudge, and we were able to put together this fund in an amazing short period of 3 to 4 weeks. Once we had the fund in place, we had the power of the entire analysts and the other partners of the startup ecosystem to evaluate these solutions and see the ability of these solutions to quickly tackle some of the challenges from the pandemic. ACT funded 50 such startups um, over the 6 to 9 month period, and we were able to impact 50 to overreach in across our programs 50 to 100 million people in our country, and save many lives. So this was a unique effort where you could bring together capital, technology, and innovation, which was here to employed largely in the in the commercial sector, quickly leverage those solutions and provide impact in the in this case the health sector. So I think it's been a great journey, and we've had multiple learnings which I can talk about later.
Okay. Nagma, you, I am really excited to know more about your Grow Fund, which, which is, which came out of an ingenious idea of serving the NGOs in this testing times, looking at the fact that most of the money has gone to PM Care, and lots of people from the civil society sector have lost their jobs. How did this come? And also, can you please talk about your support to Migrants Resilience Collaborative,
Yeah.
and also your experience of building and nurturing and managing collaboratives?
Yeah. No, thank you, Apresh. Thank you so much for inviting me and for having a conversation that is so important. See, I believe that the pandemic has actually been a stress test for all of us. So like we are human beings, and any part of our body that is weaker than the other, that is stressed when any kind of external stress is put. The pandemic has been that, and where systems have been weak, they broke. Edelgive since 2015 has been a multi-stakeholder collaborative sort of platform. Our first platform started with education, then women, and we really believe that the problems that we are all grappling with in the development sector cannot be solved by Edelgive alone or anyone alone. I mean, it will need participation. People have to come together, playing on the strengths. So actually, if I should address the Migrant Resilience Collaborative first, that when the pandemic struck, and we saw that there was so much of brilliant relief work that was happening. NGOs had responded overnight. Existing systems had really been adapted to cater to the requirement of the last mile, really, people starving and unable to reach homes. And at that time, we saw such brilliant initiatives at the grassroots that were going on that actually renewed our faith in what India and the development sector in India stand for. And in that time, we also saw that the struggles of limited budgets, the struggles of people on ground, the struggles of migrants that was going on. Jan Sahas was one of those NGOs that not only adapted quickly, but also was able to mobilize a network of grassroots NGOs that came together to first respond with providing relief to migrants, then also look at how they can reach their destination, how they should respond at destination, what is happening at source. And like all collaboratives, collaboratives cannot only happen because everybody likes each other. Collaboratives happen when different stakeholders come together with different strengths. Jan Saha's strength is the grassroots, their understanding of labor, their understanding of labor laws, their networks. Edelgive's strength is managing multiple stakeholders, talking to different, positioning the work, being able to monitor very well. And we both came together and this happened. The Migrant Resilience Collaborative is looking to work with 10 million migrant workers over the next 3 to 5 years to ensure that they are connected to social security and that they are able to come back with dignity into jobs that are provided for them. And we are very, very excited with the beginning. Not only have the funding community been extremely proactive and extremely supportive of this, but the grassroots have been so responsive. And within a matter of four months, we've been able to actually begin almost 72 centers in different states that have begun the process of registering or enabling migrants to register. So this is one strong example of how a collaborative can succeed when people come with their strengths and not to take over somebody else's job. We are all part of the same system and we all have different strengths. And that is going on. Edelgive is very committed to this, and so are the many fantastic partners, whether it's corporate, representation from Godrej, and the kind, or institutional representation that comes, foundation representations that are there, or individuals that are joining. We have very good governance, and it's going on fine. So that's, and it's there. It's going to move on autopilot, and we will be constantly measuring. To come to the last part of your question is the GROW Fund, which we are really putting together as a response to the stress that the development sector has undergone, where we're saying the whole pulse on the whole tragedy was managed by grassroots NGOs, who everyone doesn't get visibility, is not good at pitching, they may be great at working. Can we really look for 100 great initiatives and extend support to them that is more flexible, that is more empathetic, that really looks at their organizations for over the next 2 years? And that's the next big idea that we are floating, and I'm very happy to elaborate on that as well going forward.
Coming back to the hero during COVID times, Atul Satija, everyone has actually looked up to him and talked to him and learned from him about how to build a corpus and also support the smaller to bigger NGOs or non-profits. Atul, how has your journey been during the COVID times? What have you learned and what have your achievements been? I'm sure everyone knows about it, but let us hear from you.
So Presh, firstly, thanks so much for having me here. It's great to be speaking with such an esteemed panel. See, like Nagma said, COVID was a very unprecedented experience for everybody globally, and nobody was prepared for it. I remembered on the 22nd of March, a couple of days just before the lockdown, it was a Sunday, and I should give the credit where it is due. Actually, Venkat pinged me and Milap and Keto and everyone saying, guys, why don't we start a fundraiser for migrants? There is so much happening. And I think by Sunday evening, the fundraisers on the social media platforms, the crowdfunding platforms had started. I'm talking 22nd March. We realized that within 2.5, 3 days, 1 crore was raised, which was the fastest ever 1 crore you would see in any crowdfunding campaign. And it was not like an urgent health operation or a surgery need for someone. Obviously, as the lockdown started, we were starting to see the need coming from all walks of the society, and various nonprofits that we have on our platform at Give India started reaching out as well. I think what we realize is that given the volume of inbound requests and calls coming in, we realize that we ourselves won't have the resources or the time and bandwidth to gather everything. So we decided that we'll need to properly organize the efforts, given it is going to be an ongoing effort, not of days and weeks, but of months. It was starting to be visible by the middle of towards the end of March. So we announced the India COVID Response Fund in a manner that it gives confidence to all stakeholders that the fund will be managed well. We had a very independent steering committee with Govind Iyer, who's one of our board members at Give India, Ingrid from CSIP, and Mr. Shailesh Haribhakti, who's on the board of many organizations and runs a very well-respected chartered accountancy practice as well. So we had an independent steering committee, we had an advisory board to give us the strategy and the direction for the fund. And then we started reaching out to all the partners to raise the money. I think unlike Give India's muscles from the past, where we are used to raising money from retail donors, we realize that retail donors, as much as they can give, they won't be able to fulfill the need on the ground, and all of us collectively couldn't, right? So we had to open up everything. So after a very long time, Give India again started reaching out to HNIs, UHNIs, corporates and foundations as well. And actually somebody from Gates Foundation nudged us to consider doing a fund. And we thought that was a great idea. And that's how this idea of creating a structured fund with all donor segments came about. I think it was an insanely high intensity operation, so to say, of a couple of months. And I'm sure for many, many people on this call, CSR guys, foundations, everybody was working crazy during that time. And so were we. We got a batch of 15, 20 people from ISB graduates who got offers, but they couldn't join because it was April, it was COVID. So they started working pro bono with us. A lot of our board members almost joined as employees of Give India and started giving 12 hours a day. A lot of our advisory board members started making calls. And I'm very happy that, COVID, like Nagma also said, right? Because the times were such, everybody was just thinking society for a change and not economy. And that was very, very important, where everybody is thinking India and Indians and not generally sort of, the numbers and the metrics. And it was easier for us to go to people and say, look, can you help? And everybody would said yes. Over the last 5-6 months of work since COVID started, we were able to raise about 220 crores. 200 plus crores of that got dispersed much faster. And now we are going through the second round of funding to the constituents that are needing more help. Give India ended up supporting about 56 lakh people with 250 NGOs that we partnered with across the country in 113 plus towns and cities, out of which 5.5 lakh people got just cash transfers in their bank accounts because they didn't have money to buy the meals for the family or the other emergency needs in the the family side. We had dry ration kits, sanitation kits, 100 plus ambulances, tens of lakhs of PPE kits, face masks, face shields. We had mobile screening vans running in Bombay in many of the high density slums where cases were shooting up, and things like that. So it was a very intense effort. I think overall, more than the work on the ground, I see that it was actually a giving collective, which as Give India, we had not done in the past. And it's the giving collective where we had 3.5 lakh individual donors who came and gave anywhere from 50 rupees all the way to 5 crores. We had 70 plus corporate partners, 25 plus brands, 10 plus platform partners like PhonePe, Google Pay, and partners like that, and 15 plus foundations, from Gates Foundation to Omidya to Nilekani's to MacArthur to Dell Foundation to so many others. It was mind blowing on how quickly people were coming together to just, and most of pretty much what we did as Give India was to say that we need help. We were just representing the need that we were hearing on the ground, and we saw that it was all coming through very quickly. So that was on the Give India side. I should also highlight that last year has been, even from the nudge, had very, very unique and different. As an operating NGO working on the ground with your heads down, trying to do whatever programs you run. And all of that was disrupted. All of our Gurukuls got shut down that we painstakingly built over the last 5 years. We couldn't run any Gurukul. So we look back and we are reflecting on, how do we sort of go forward? And on the collaboration side, as a theme for this topic, there are two more initiatives that we started. Give India was more a giving collective where we got support from a lot of corporate partners and foundations and HNIs, and we distributed and worked with 250 plus NGOs on the ground. One of the unique things we started last year, which is a very interesting experiment for development sector to learn from, and I'm very curious to see what learnings it brings, is collective action. Collective action has not been experimented very deeply in India yet, but it's a concept that's gaining traction worldwide, where different partners come together with very different muscles, and different muscles are deployed to solve different pieces of the puzzle, but collectively it's solving a singular problem. So H&M Foundation was looking for a partner last year to launch a collective action project. And we are glad that they chose us as a backbone partner. We are running a $11 million, about 85 crore project for next 3 to 5 years, where we are working with the waste pickers community in Bangalore, informal waste pickers. It's about 22,500 people in Bangalore who do this, plus their families. So it's about lakh plus people. We are working with them with 7 or 8 different partners with very, very different skill set. BBC Media Action, LabourNet, CARE, Save the Children, Hasiru Dala, and others, who all are looking at different aspects of the life of the waste pickers, whether it is social protection, education of their kids, exit opportunities, skilling opportunities, and things like that. That's the second thing we're doing. And the last one to very briefly touch upon is something we are starting in UP, which is actually marrying both the Give India collective giving and this H&M Samuhika Shakti, as it is called, which is a collective action. So we're trying an experiment where we experiment with collective giving and collective action together in UP. It's called Asha Kiran, the Hope Project. We'll be sharing that more about that in the next month or so.
Lovely. Prashant, now with ACT grant, I've heard that you're coming out with the ACT grants 2.0, where you're going to focus on education, environment, and other areas. Can you touch upon your future plans?
Yeah, Prish, what we learned from our Act 1.0, which was created to fight the pandemic, is like Atul and Nagma have mentioned, the power of the collective. And in this case, I think ACT was a unique organization of folks in a particular sector. So there have been previously other industry organizations that have been created, which had CSR kind of initiatives as a byproduct of the overall, whether it's NASCOM or CII and all these. But I think ACT was unique, as in the collective came together with the single mission of providing societal impact. So it was, I think, the first time in India where people across the venture, in this case startups, the venture community, and the investment bankers created an organization with just this mission. So the realization was that something unique has happened here. So how do we leverage this unique byproduct of coming together for the pandemic for multiple verticals that still need a lot of action in our country, whether it's education, environment, livelihoods, and so on. And the learnings that have also been realized are largely three. One, the ability of the network effect, which largely all our entrepreneurs leverage in their businesses, is something that the same network concept of network effect can be brought into the social sector. And I think Atul and Nagma have also alluded a little bit to that, right? So how do you bring this effect of impact, inspiring others, and getting more collective action? So that is one big learning that we think we would like to leverage for multiple verticals. Second is the idea of technology, which was created for mainstream commercial applications. Can this innovation, rather than creating grounds up technology for the impact sector, can you repurpose technology that was created, platforms that were created to serve millions of people in commercial applications? Can you quickly redeploy them for the impact sector? So that we learned a lot about how to do that from the pandemic, and we want to now leverage that same learning for other verticals. And finally, the third, and I think the most important learning, is how do you work with the government, and what are the mechanisms where that you can deploy of the same collaboration to get your platforms to accelerate much faster through collaborative action with the government. I think a combination of these three we want to leverage for these other verticals. And I think in general, innovation, the grant giving for innovation is still a large white space in the country. And I think there's no better folks than the people who are involved in the startup ecosystem, people who are involved in the venture ecosystem, who can understand and play a role in applying innovation to these large societal areas that are still largely unsolved in our country. And so we have folks like Ashish Dhawan, who are leading the vertical in ACT in the education area. I'm taking a lead along with GV, my colleague from Sequoia, in the environmental area, and similarly, there are other verticals that may come up.
Wonderful. Nagma, your experience in collaborative action, and what are your future plans with regard to other areas that you are going to venture?
So, like I briefly alluded to it, Apresh, our experience in collaboratives, we've been, like I said, we are now in our 6th collaborative, and all of them are running parallelly. There are teams that are dedicated to ensuring that they're meeting their mission and that we're managing these stakeholders also. And that's a part of a very thoughtful design that we had in 2014, that the way forward should be collaborative. I mean, it's not necessary that everybody collaborates, people have their own priorities, but we thought that doing things together made more sense. And we are committed to ensuring that there is enough infrastructure from collaborative, which means, everything from the exciting thing, that what is happening in the field that meets the common purpose, like an MRC, how do you ensure these people get back into productive jobs? But also the more boring part or the more the routine part of collaborative, everything from good governance, ensuring transparency, ensuring every stakeholder understands what is happening and there is common value that is being generated. So Edelgive has a very, inbuilt strength now, team-wise as well as systems-wise, to ensure that we can manage multiple collaboratives at the same time. And that's why our ability to immediately respond and create another one. It has been a very, very exciting journey so far. When we are thinking of how we will take this forward, the Grow is a very big example, because we are now thinking 100 NGOs together. We're thinking how many people can join us in this venture. And we're also giving it a limited time within which we want some number of things to happen. And that is for us very exciting. The way forward for Edelgive is really this: let's play on our strengths, let's join hands with equally strong people in different domains, let's identify issue by issue and move forward collaboratively. I think that is it's very, very clear for us. This is how we will operate. And right from our beginning, since 2008, we have been a pan-India operator. We started with 12 states. We are still now in more than 15 states. We have our coverage, and through Grow, we are also going to ensure that there is movement into those states where we have not been present yet. So yes, we will do more of the same, learning a lot from the lessons that have been taught to us. And in the immediate future, whereas MRC and Grow are going to be two very important facts for us, but in the long term also, partnerships is the way, collaboration is the way for us.
Good. Atul, you were mentioning about your program, that Samuhik program.
Samohika Shakti, correct.
So can you elaborate more on this and how the central theme? Sorry, I should have mentioned this at the beginning of the session, but our idea is to excite the corporate social responsibility leaders to collaborate instead of going solo. So I would come to that part after your answer to the question about the Samuhika.
Yeah. So, Apresh, as I was saying, Samohika Shakti is an initiative that's uh, funded by H&M Foundation. And the idea is to take one audience, in this case, it is informal waste pickers only in Bangalore city. So it's a very defined boundary. And 22,500 informal waste pickers work in this area and their families. And they have lots of challenges, right? Income is not stable and certain. So there's a lot of fluctuation in that. The dignity of the work that they are doing is not very high. The communities that they live in, the children don't get the right education. So education inequity is high, and many things like that. There is no exit opportunity for people from waste pickers to go to other areas because of lack of skills in other domains as well. So what H&M Foundation really wanted to do, and what we are working together with them on the strategy for this, is how do we bring different partners that have very, very different skill set. Hasiru Dala, for example, has been working with waste pickers for so long. They are very, very deep experts in this. But if you want to build a narrative for this audience, BBC Media Action is a really good partner. On the skilling side, LaborNet has done great work. Save the Children is bringing education equity here, and things like that. We're working with various partners, bringing them together towards a singular project, singular audience, shared measurement. The goals of the project are shared as well, and everybody's work benefits the other partner as well. So they come together towards a single problem and work towards solving it. It's a 3-year phase 1 project that started now, and it just got launched in the middle of lockdown, actually in the middle of COVID, few months back, and now it's starting to see on-ground action as well. That's what we are doing here. My real hope is that if we are able to find 1 + 1 + 1 far more than 3 because of collective action happening, I think it's a very strong case for picking cause, geography, audience-centric collaboratives in India's development space.
Wonderful. Now, Prashant, with your experience of bringing the VC and startup community together, and we've seen brands going solo, thinking more about their brands and their corporate vision, aligning the CSR policies with their vision. How would you what is your idea of bringing the corporates to the collaborative and coming to a collective goal of solving a particular issue?
See, Apresh, I think one of the challenges of the CSR folks in these corporates has been to find the right platforms which can scale, right? So they typically are faced with a portfolio that's ever expanding, because none of these initiatives that they try to support or fund scale. And this has been a big challenge in the CSR sector in India in general. I mean, if you look at the number of NGOs that there have been and how many of these NGOs really have got to any scale. And I think that can change with the idea of, scalability and platforms, which is what VCs and startups, aspire to do and build, right? So, and we need to demonstrate some of that, as we have been able to demonstrate where a platform like Step One, for example, which is a very simple telemedicine platform that was put together in about 2 weeks, is now serving 20 plus states in this country. And all this happened in just 3 to 6 months, which is something that we have just not seen in the social sector. So so there are organizations that have been working with schools, for example. They've been working with schools for, 2 decades, 3 decades, but have reached, maybe a few hundred schools. How do you reach, 1 to 2 lakh schools in the next 1 year? The only way to do that is through technology platforms, and these digital platforms have fortunately been built during the pandemic for urban school children, for example. Can you take these urban digital platforms and scale them in the next 2 to 3 years and not 2 to 3 decades to reach the 100 crore children in this country? Once corporates see the power of that impact, I think they will start participating and collaborating more beyond just what they've seen and what they've been able to do before.
Wonderful. Nagma, with your experience of running the collaboratives, how has your experience been with regard to collaborating with the corporates?
Yeah, you're asking me how has the experience being
Working with the corporates, yeah.
Okay. No, so, I try as much, and Edelgive tries as much to not slot people into corporates or non-corporates, because finally, see, because as and Atul and as well as Prashant, I think attest to that we have to look at common value instead of stakeholder identity. So even to the point that came in the chat box, that our NGOs stakeholders, of course, they are the primary stakeholders. They are the main actors, and everybody else is a facilitator. And so when we are even operating with partners, everyone is a partner and they are coming together for a value. When we are looking at corporate partnerships, we have to also understand they have multiple, concerns and multiple things that they are trying to adhere to also. Everything from budget allocations to compliance requirements to brand requirements, and we have to respect that. And in a collaboration, it's very important for when we are in corporate partnerships to understand that transparency and governance and compliance is top of the top requirements for any corporate partnership to happen, because again, they are accountable to their boards, they are accountable to governments, and they have to make their end of year targets as well. When you account for it and plan for it and include them as partners with a voice, also giving them a responsibilities, things tend to get easier. Because they know what they're really in the mission for. When we talk about common outcomes and common measurements, which should actually be the way entire industry or entire work around development happens, it only becomes possible when you have those transparent systems that are built in, and corporate partners we have to be even more cognizant of. I have found this group very, very keen on impact. But because they also need a context, it becomes a requirement of Edelgave or maybe Give India or Nudge also, that we are supposed to be the ones who ensure they have that understanding of what transparent systems look like. We just assume that everybody's got it, because we are so seeped into it. It becomes our job as collaborators at the center of collaboration to ensure we communicate this properly. And I've understood most of the times, if you communicate things honestly and clearly, even if the targets are lesser than required, people understand, because everybody's finally human. It's usually communication becomes your first problem. And if you communicate well, things are usually okay.
And Atul, your experience working with the corporates, you mentioned that you collaborated with corporate foundations, also many corporates in the country during the COVID. Do you see the same thing happening going forward?
The same thing you mean people continue to come forward and support and collaborate? Actually, I'm very optimistic on this. I feel like there are some things, when you stretch a rubber long enough and keep it there, it permanently changes shape and form, right? It's permanently longer. I think COVID will have a long lasting impact on the sector. It is not just people will go back to exactly the same place.
Yeah.
Obviously, it won't be as urgent as it was in the middle of COVID. But the reality is that India's poverty is bigger and resources are less. So the need for collaboration is far higher now than it was ever before in the last decade, so to say. So all the hard work that the sector did and the country did in getting large number of people out of poverty, some of that is undone now. And with less resources, with all the things that are happening this year, people kind of front loaded their spending as well in terms of philanthropy. Next year, the money is going to be less. So it is even more important because there is only so much money for risk taking, for experimentation, for pilots, for learning, for experiments on the ground. And if people don't collaborate, the collective impact of philanthropic and development sector will be subpar. So I'm very bullish that, like Nagma said, there is a need for case building in this. So it won't happen naturally. There is work to be done by various stakeholders. I know many progressive CSR leaders who actually galvanize others around them and say, can we have a dialogue on this? And there are many philanthropists who do that, many foundations who do that. So various actors are doing that in their own way. And I'm sure organizations like Edelgive and others who have this as their sort of main role, right, in terms of bringing collaboratives together, will also take a lead in building the narrative building, and different players will play their own role in that. So I'm very optimistic that you'll see a lot more collaboration going forward than we saw even pre-COVID.
Wonderful. Before we take final inputs from all of you, we can take some questions. It is Archana. Oh, you already answered that question. So my question to every one of you, give us some reasons as to why corporate to collaborate. I heard from you scalability, diverse knowledge, then Nagma's transparency, accountability, and impact assessment, then Atul's collective action and wisdom. We got another question. Can you suggest? Can we take some questions, please? I don't think we have questions coming in. So can we have final words from all of you? Starting with you, Prashant.
Yeah, Ramesh, it's been a great session. Thank you for hosting this. I will just summarize uh, just a couple points. One, I think the um, area of social startups and the impact that socially inclined startups can provide is just starting out in our country. So there will emerge, I think, a very new intersection of new funds and new entrepreneurs who are wanting to spend more of their entrepreneurial energy on social themes moving forward. And I'm really hopeful that that will create kind of a very large catalytic and snowball impact in the social sector, and we will solve problems, intractable problems that have uh, been, our bane for the last few decades. Uh, and I think the power of data and technology will accelerate some of this. This has happened in a few cases in some of the governmental platforms like Aadhaar, but I don't think it has still created any tangible results in areas like environment or education or livelihood. There have been, small pilots where technology has made an impact, but really the next decade is going to be about harnessing this entrepreneurial energy to solve some of these large societal problems.
Thank you very much, Prashant. Nagma?
So I'm very high on collaboration. Like I said, we've done it enough times now to know that what we can do together, we can just not do alone. Case in point, the first time we started a collaboration, we were very tentative. There was very few role models ahead of us on how to do it. So it was an education project. It is still running, in 7 districts with multiple corporate partners and NGOs on the ground. And because things went right, because they were designed for multi-stakeholder partnership, we could escalate, or we could just multiply the program from working with 25,000 children to 1.5 million children, all in a matter of 14 months. And that's what a power of a good collaborative can done. But I also want to say here that collaborations have to be done with a lot of humility. As great as good responses and good results can, we have all to come together also completely knowing that things can fail, and we should all be okay with that, because collaboratives are new to India. Being okay with the risk that they come with should also be something that we are cognizant of when we enter this. So plan for success, plan for growth, but factor in that we are in a risky, we are taking risks because we are working with issues that have been seeped into our systems for decades and sometimes centuries. Knowing that, it's been fantastic that more and more people have started working on collaboratives, more and more people have started functioning around them. And probably one of the few good things that is coming out of COVID is that people are eager to join hands and see what we can do that can reduce the trauma that is going on in this country and all over the world. So I'm very high on it. And there are great examples like we are seeing on this panel also on how things can be done right. And if you plan for that, I think a lot of good can happen in the coming years.
Thank you. Atul, your final words, please.
Well, I think nothing materially more to add than what I said before. I think the only thing I would say is there was a comment on stakeholders, right? If people come together, are they also stakeholders? And Nagma made a comment that nonprofits are at the center and not just can they be one of the stakeholders, the primary stakeholders. I think that the way the development sector conversations are, and there's another question that was there which I responded, which asked about can social enterprises be included in the dialogue and in the sector. So I think my first call out here is that we need to start seeing development sector more broadly as various people who come together to make development happen.
Wonderful.
Somebody said, what is the role of government in poverty? Government obviously is a primary stakeholder of solving for the problems of society, right? So government is important. Markets are also important. Just because somebody is a for-profit legal entity doesn't mean that they don't do development. It is not a private agenda for, say, only non-profits, right? So there are non-profits, there are for-profits, there is government, there are also academia that informs, there are researchers. All of them have a role to play in development, and we need to have a very inclusive dialogue with all actors coming together to solve for the most important constitution, which is like the people who we are trying to work with on the ground. So that's my first comment to broaden the conversation and definition of what we mean are the development actors and stakeholders. Second is unlike for-profit or market problems that are relatively less multidimensional, non-profit sector problems are far more, wicked in nature, right? And there is no right or wrong answer in wicked problems. There are only better or worse answers. And when there is so much ambiguity on what is right and what is not right, the only way is to learn together, collaborate with each other, and you shorten the learning much, much more. You spend less money in learning, you take higher risk, you innovate more, you're more creative together. So it's a very strong believer in working together towards the problems that are unfortunately not seeming to disappear. That's about it.
Wonderful. So there is a saying in Sanskrit, Sanghe Shakti Kalau Yuge. Collaboration is power in the current times. We've been living in a very difficult circumstances. 2 days from now, the vaccines are going to be delivered across the cities, but I hope everybody is safe, well. But this has also, the pandemic has also given us opportunities to come together, come closer to serve the humanity. We have seen Ashish could not join because of certain reasons, but with three amazing people, we have seen how what can be achieved by collaborating together, coming together. With this, I would end this session. If there is any question, please feel free to ask before they sign off. What catalysts we needed to help forge such large scale collaborations? This question is for Nagma.
What is the question for me? Would catalysts be needed to help forward such a large scale?
What catalysts we needed to help collaboratives?
All right, depends on what we call, what we're saying when we're saying catalyst. I've really found that, yes, you need certain actors to be taking leads. We have been one of them, like Atul said, and now what Givindia and Naja doing are one of them. What do we really mean by catalyst? When multiple stakeholders come together, there needs to be at least somebody who's willing to give. See, the secret sauce in a collaboration is that you must be okay with giving up some power, right? Because when more than two people are sitting in dialogue, everyone can't have their way 100% of the time. So there has to be at least one player that becomes the oil in the machinery. And that for me is the catalyst. We play this role here. Atul is playing this role in H&M. And we do need those catalysts. But to give them some form of shape that it means that you must be an intermediary, or it means you must be an X, Y, and Z, would be defeating the purpose of what we say catalyst should be in a dialogue. Every collaborative needs catalyst, and we can all take the role of the catalyst if we choose to be the one who brings reasonability, good processes, and good design into the behavior of more than two people in a common dialogue. I think it starts from there. And because India is, like I said, an under-nurtured market as far as collaboratives are concerned, hopefully in 2-3 years' time, I will reverse this statement and say, yes, we are really there at the thick of it. We should be okay with making small dialogues, waiting for them to become big, taking some risks, okay with not achieving monthly, quarterly, yearly targets, This is the role that you play to make sure that your mission moves on to the next level and multiple people can get value out of what we've started. So yes, we need catalysts and we can all be catalysts.
With this, I would like to end the session. Thank you very much. Ms. Nagma Mula, Mr. Prashant Prakash, Mr. Atul Sateja. I hope we will be benefiting uh, in the years to come from you all with your knowledge, with your passion and commitment to serve the humanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Aprish.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Yeah.
With this, I would pass the mic on to Mr. Bhuvan Bhaskar, who would be moderating this next session, which is on agriculture.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Apresh, for giving me the baton. And I can see out of 4 fantastic speakers, my panelists, one Nusrat I can see. Can somebody confirm if, yeah, Kaushalendra ji is also there. So I'm waiting for Mr. Ashwini Saxena and Mr. Pankaj Gupta.
Tina would be joining in 15 minutes.
Okay, so we can start the proceedings by is Mr. Pankaj Gupta available, or we should start?
You should start.
Okay. So just to give an introduction to this panel discussion. Of course, we are here for a CSR discussion, but under the CSR, what we are going to discuss, what we are going to talk about is agriculture. And whenever we agriculture is in fact anyways the flavor of the day, and all the media or be it newspaper or televisions, everywhere agriculture is there. So maybe some good and some bad news are there related to agriculture. But when we talk about agriculture from the CSR perspective, 2 words come very frequently at the fore, and these 2 words are resilience and sustainability. So it goes with the broad theme of this whole program of these 3 days, that resilient India. And so we can't achieve to have a resilient India before we have a resilient agriculture, and more so the sustainable agriculture for our farmers. So agriculture, we have to develop our agriculture, but for whom? So many a times this discussion comes up that agriculture should be developing, but are farmers also being developed? Are farmers also being sustainable with the sustainability of this agriculture sector? And what is the role CSR can play in this? And this is very interesting if we see the whole issue in the context that agriculture is one sector where the government is also very much keen to put the help, be it in the form of money or from other sources. So how CSR can play its role when the CSR, the coffers are minuscule with respect to what we have from the government sources, from the other, you may say, some other developmental organizations, be it international, national. So how CSR can make a sign, how CSR can make a difference into this vast and very vast. So more than 12 crore farmers are there in this country. And so just to begin with, I would invite Nusrat Pathanji. So before I start, I should first introduce my panelists, And so I have two panelists as of now. Two we are waiting for. So as soon as they join, I will introduce them as well. But as of now, we have Nusrat Pathanji, who is heading the CSR at NCD. I'm sorry, NCDX. This is my organization, so it comes first. So HDFC. So, ma'am, I'm sorry. Nusrat Pathan, head of CSR for HDFC, and we have another speaker panelist with us who is a known name to anybody who knows about agriculture, who has an interest in developmental agriculture stories. So Mr. Kaushalendra is with us, and Mr. Kaushalendra is from he is, if I go by introducing him with his qualificational degrees, because IIMs and IITs are very coveted degrees in in our country. So he has those degrees, but he chose not to go with corporates and not to sit on our side. He chose to sit on the other side of the table with farmers, with agriculture, and so he's doing a fantastic job in Bihar and Jharkhand, uh, creating market linkages for the farmers, focused on the vegetable growers. So he will tell us more about that. So I will just call upon Nusrat Pathanji to just as I have decided to run this show, like 5 minutes our speakers will tell about their thinking, about their vision about CSR and agriculture, how they can be linked, and how we can create a sustainable and resilient agricultural scenario with CSR. And then we'll go to the question answer session. Some questions I will ask to them. Some questions I would invite the viewers and listeners to ask. So let's start with Madam Nusrat Pathan. Ma'am, you are on mute.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So thank you so much, Bhuvan, for the warm introduction. And it's always a pleasure to be on a forum like this and to share what the bank does in the area of CSR. You mentioned that it comes very natural to you, your organization's name and an introduction. So I think with us, what's natural is to start with what we do. So let me give you a little gist of what we do under CSR, just to give a little bit of a flavor, and then dive into what we do in agriculture in particular. HDFC Bank's CSR program currently, as of date, has reached out rather to about 8 million lives, and we are panned across 23 states. We largely work in thematic areas. We work on education, we work on skilling, rural development, financial literacy and inclusion, and health and sanitation. I think safe to say that almost 75% of our work is in rural India. And one of our flagship programs is something that we goes under the banner of Holistic Rural Development Program. And this is a program that we had initiated about 5 years back to see what happens in a geography when all these various thematic areas come together, and what sort of an impact does one create. We are really happy to share that currently this program is actually touched close to 2,000 villages across 19 states pan India, and working on a gamut of activities. Now, given the agrarian nature of our villages, it is needless to say that when you're working on economic and social development of villages in particular, working with the farmers is going to be at the heart of this. And we are no different. Our program is no different. So a lot of our efforts do go in working very closely with the farmers in issues of livelihood. Currently we've and of course linked to agriculture is the natural resource management. So if I'm looking at our portfolio currently, we've already covered about 28,000 acres of land which have actually been treated. We've created about 23,000 enterprises, small enterprises in these villages that we are working in. We've done seed banks. We've done 5,000 odd self-help groups that we've currently active. through various, pan India. And we've also done about close to 9,000 water structures. Now, when I'm talking and when we're talking about agriculture, I mean, I think we all know that, close to 16% of our GDP constitutes of agriculture, right? And but when we are actually looking at how many people are into agriculture, there's a vast difference. If we add to that the actual families and the household, who contribute to maybe labor in the fields, you come up with a mind-boggling figure, maybe, probably close to about 500 million people who are actually engaged in this. I think given that, it is very, very imperative for us to look at what is actually the outcome and the productivity of this particular activity. And sadly, agriculture currently is not looked at as lucrative, even by the very farmers that are working in these fields, for multiple reasons, which I think are well known to all of us. Whether it is lack of scientific, whether technology, or whether it is information, or whether it is water conditions, drought. I think all this couples to the fact that increasingly this is not becoming an occupation of choice for many. I think also, given the climate risks that we currently see, this really adds to the condition of the of the farmers. What is it that we do? So when we work, and we're working with about close to 60 odd partners, implementation partners, who are actually working for us on the field. The whole idea is, how do we increase the how do we improve the economic profile of these farmers? And we have found that, of course, the main challenge that needs to be addressed here is raising the productivity, and making farming actually remunerative for the farmers, right? So we do this in a very, how do we look at it? We look at it in a very steered way. At one level, we are working with the farmer, where we are actually working with him on providing a lot of skills, a lot of training that we do. And in addition to that, we are also working on the ecosystem, because we find that just working with the farmer and giving him, hand holding him, providing support is not just enough. You have to have the right ecosystem for him to actually be able to operate in. And these are the two areas that typically we focus our efforts on. If I was to break it down in terms of, what are the 3 or 4 areas in particular that one focuses on when working on agriculture, I think largely it would be, one is to enhance the productivity and create a good market linkage for them. The other was to see what is the value additions that one can add, right? Which is through various off-farm activities, whether it is livestock, whether it is dairy, what exactly it is that one can actually do to create a better profile for this farmer. Sustainable farming is something, I think even you mentioned, and it's very imperative that we talk to them about sustainable farming. We talk about promoting technologies and techniques to actually improve efficiency, whether it is drip, whether it is soil testing, whether we talk about multi-tier farming, especially to small landholders. And lastly, we talk about building more resilience against climate change. So, promoting more climate efficient, what do you call it? Climate crops. Yeah. So climate efficient crops. So these are largely the areas that one looks at when you're working with these farmers. Within that, we, in addition to the training, of course, the entire gamut of activities, whether it is technology, whether it is demonstration through farmer field schools, and nudging them, encouraging them to adopt and to replicate these techniques is something that we focused on. So it's largely education, training, demonstration, replication. So these are the 3 things that we typically follow. And in addition to that, you create an ecosystem in which the farmers can operate. Very often we talk about technology because agriculture is a very labor intensive, occupation. And the more they adopt technology, the increase in yield that is very visible that we see. But with this also is a question of how much of access do they have.
Yeah.
So that's when I'm talking about the ecosystem, So in the clusters that we worked in, we create tool banks where we actually create, we have self-help groups or FPOs actually taking onus of this. And we hand over a set of equipment to them and we help them in the entire planning, so that at least the small and marginal farmers can have access to this.
Yeah.
Another very important thing, Bhuvan, here I might want to mention is also training them on marketing and on financial management, because I think this is very, very critical, in terms of helping them to become sustainable. So one doesn't really look at, going there and
I'm really sorry, Nusrat, I'm interrupting you, but thank
yeah,
you so much that you have in fact set the tone. But there are many points that you have raised, and we would like to hear more about these points on these points.
absolutely,
But
absolutely.
let it come to you in the form of questions from audience and
All
from
right.
me,
Okay.
right?
Sure.
So
So unless there is something else that you would want me to touch, then I think I pretty much encapsulated what we've been doing in these
yeah.
areas.
So
And yeah, over to you.
yeah. Thank you so much. And you have really pondered over, and you have initiated the talks in a way that we have got so many points to talk over. And while talking from the point of view of resilience and sustainability, uh, there are many points that you have raised, and of course we would going forward we would touch those points, and we would love to know more and more about how you
Absolutely.
are doing and how do you want to do it. I mean, maybe many things you have not have successfully done it as of now, but what is your thinking about how
Sure.
one should go for them? So now
Absolutely.
we have Kaushalendra ji, and Kaushalendra ji, you have listened many things that you would be thinking. Many things come to your daily working, and in between you have been feeling like what are the things that should be plugged in with these points in your daily business and daily working. So I would just call upon you, and you please come and tell us from the what I told in the very beginning, that from the other side of the table you tell us that not only from the point of view of what agriculture is and how is it what are the bottlenecks and what are the challenges and how is it just moving on, but also that what are the things that you aspire to be helped in with the corporates and in CSR terms, so that we can just uh, move our talks and our discussion in that direction also, and we can ask something from Nusrat ji also on these lines also. Please, you are on mute, Kaushalendra. You are on mute.
Yeah, thanks Bhuvanji for warm welcome and warm introduction. And thanks a lot, Nusra ji, you have covered almost everything when it comes to pointing out what could be done in agriculture and all. Let me first introduce our organization that I work with, Kaushalya Foundation. We have been working in two states of Bihar and Jharkhand. And we started our 2007 with small, marginal and landless farmers. We focus on vegetables. Over the period, we have also working with other farmers, uh, like farmers who are growing maize, farmers who are growing paddy, farmers who are growing lentils. So we are working with all the farmers in last 12, 13 years, and we can proudly say we are working with more than 50,000 farmers family in Bihar and Jharkhand. And we have set up in 8 districts. We have offices there, field offices, and primary office in Patna from where we were. The primary motive of our organization to be established in 2007, I, Om Prakash, Vinita, Dhirender ji, and others, we three of them are from IIM Ahmedabad, some of them from IRM Jaipur. We together come together and establish this. We have been listening a lot about this should be done, this should be done, this should be done. So we thought, okay, can we do it? Can we go to the farmer and start doing with them? Can we bring things that they only think, okay, this should be ours also. This should be doing also. So can we do with them? And with this notion, we have started doing. And I would like to, without taking the name, while I was doing MBA in Ahmedabad, I interacted with somebody from development sector, and his point of view was like things is pretty much very difficult to change in Bihar. You cannot change the attitude of the people who are working at the grassroots level, who are at the bottom of the pyramid, especially farmers, laborers. So I thought, and we thought, okay, we are from Bihar, let's start doing something. So we identified all the, in addition to the problem and challenges that Nusra ji already talked about, and I also given the hint, attitude of the people. We always try to work on the attitude of the people. And second thing is that we are witnessing aging population. India is growing. India's population is becoming younger, but when it comes to farming community, when it comes to agriculture, we have found its aging population. Youth are not coming into the sector for doing the farming, not coming to the sector to do the cultivation. So that's its challenge. That's one of the major challenge that we are witnessing. And next 5-10 years, it may lead to food insecurity in the country, because we may not have the farmers who can do the cultivation. And especially, which is very unique to eastern part of the country, is most of the male members are migrated to
Kaushalendra
the
ji,
metro.
Kaushalendra ji,
Yeah.
may I request you to put your video off and then say, because your connectivity is a bit low, so your voice is breaking very frequently. So you may put off your video and then you may speak. That will, I think,
Okay,
better.
okay,
Yeah.
Bhuvanji. And third is, since most of the male members are migrating to different cities of India, how is my voice now?
Yeah, it is better now. So you please keep on talking like that only.
Okay. So third is, since most of the people are migrating to different cities of India, so in villages, whenever you go to the villages, especially in Bihar, Jharkhand, you will find a lot of women are there, and they are not interested. They are now interested with the work to do work of farming, to do the cultivation and everything. And when you take a look at your farm equipments, most of the farm equipments are male friendly. They are not female friendly at all. And we have been encountering this problem for last 5 years. That is one of the major challenges that we have been facing. So first is attitude. Second is we are not inspiring or not giving incentive enough to the youth to come to the agriculture. And third is we are left with the women population. And fourth is, which is again, we are witnessing climate change. In last 3 years, we have been seeing flood in areas of Bihar where we have not witnessed. We could not even think of, okay, these districts can have the flood. And we are witnessing drought in districts where we could not even think of, okay, water level can decrease to this level in these districts. And rainfall has become so erratic, and temperature has been varying so much that everybody is very panic in mode, especially farmers. So considering these four challenges, attitude of the region, which is given, which can be worked upon. Second is youth, women, and climate change. I think whatever we need to do in the area, especially agriculture in eastern part of the country, we must take into account all four. And addition to that is infrastructure, which could lead to the participation from the vulnerable farmers. When I say vulnerable, 91% farmers of Bihar and Jharkhand comes into the category of small and marginal farmers. So why not think of they are participating in their mandis? So those kind of infrastructure which could be conducive to them, which could be inviting for them, okay, you can come and participate, do the trading of your produce, do the marketing of your produce, you can do your buying, you can do your sellings. And last but not least is skilling. In last 10 years, what we have seen, lot of technology have changed, new equipments have come, and we are witnessing that farmers are really struggling with, okay, government is giving subsidy on this equipment, but there is no institution, there is no place where they can go and can learn about how to operate this equipment, how to manage the equipment, and how to go about the farming of particular crop, and how to adopt sustainable farming, how to adopt global agriculture practices. So I am leaving now with these 5-6 points.
Okay. So now we may start the question answer, and I'm putting my own question first. But we have started getting some questions from the audience also, and I will put them also to our panelists. But as I would like to start with the toughest part first. So as Nusrat ji and Kaushalendra both talked about this climate change, and as the broader theme of our discussion is also concerned with resilience and the resilient agriculture. Uh, this is really going to be the toughest part for the agriculture in whole, as the government also has started recognizing it. Last year, if we see the government in its economic outlook, it had given just a factual research was there that says that in coming 3 to 4 decades, climate change is going to be the biggest challenge for our agriculture, the productivity and all sort of things that the agriculture is connected to. But now the question arises is, are really corporates capable, and are they having those kind of resources and bandwidths that they can really just go for making a difference from this point of view in agriculture? Nusraji, you told us that some of the work that you have been doing as part of your CSR program that has environment as its focus. But when it comes to the impact that is supposed to be on agriculture in coming decades, not only years but in decades, how can the CSR make an impact and difference to those conditions? You are on mute.
Sorry. So firstly, I would say that no, corporates are not capable of influencing or executing projects, and that's not what we do. So we are only as good as our partners are. I did say that we are working with about close to 60 odd NGO partners in implementing and executing these programs. I think the key is to planning. Because when you plan the program, I think when corporate CSR projects are initiated, the thought that goes into planning the programs, understanding the geography, its needs, and then executing. So I'll give you an example of two programs really. In Maharashtra, of course, we are doing a large watershed program. Now, there for me to dive into working for agriculture without really working on watershed is going to be futile. So it has to be a very planned strategy for a particular district. So we are really working on watershed, and then we will move on to talk about agriculture. If I was to talk about Kerala, post the floods, we had initiated a program in Kerala, and we taken on intervention in about 25 villages in Kerala with a partnership with MSSRF. And there we've actually gone down with the farmers and worked on on paddy varieties that are resistant to floods. So I think there is a need to understand. Corporates definitely don't have that level of understanding which a grassroots organization has, but we could definitely plan out our interventions in a way, in a strategic way, to keep in mind certain considerations when we are working in the field of agriculture. So I think that's what I think is utmost important.
Okay. So I have got two questions, one from
Yep.
Mr. Sujay and one from Archana Tomarji. I would like to sum these two questions up, and I would put it in one question,
Sure.
just giving it a cover and color of CSR. So, is flexibility a problem in CSR, and how much or how bigger is this problem? Because the questions say that, like Archana Tomarji is asking that if some why not to, or why, how can uh, a company, a corporate under its CSR promote the organic farming? Or Sujay is asking that if someone wants to move into hydroponic farming, then can a corporate be so much flexible under its CSR that they go for need based help, or in these kind of environment, like if any community of or any farmer group comes to you and says that, okay, we want to uh, go for this kind of cultivation, are you
Sure.
in position to help them?
So I really don't see the problem here, Bhuvan, because as you said, any CSR intervention to be effective has to be need based, right? As long as one is operating within the boundaries of the CSR rules, obviously I can't work directly with a farmer group, right? It has to be through a not for profit,
Right.
etc. I don't see any reason. There have been multiple places where we have worked. Of course, we worked with poly houses. We worked in fisheries, where a group of villagers said they would want to promote fisheries in the farm pond, in the village pond. We've done that. So we've done, we've done a variety of diversification in terms of intervention. As long as there is how do you say, there is a science, there is a proven methodology behind it, and one looks at the feasibility. I think if these two are in place, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be able to work on any options such as those proposed, provided that comes into the planning phase. Now, when you're talking about flexibility, I think most programs are structured in a way where you have an end objective in line. And to meet that end objective, you plan your milestones, right? And what interventions need to be done, they are not directed by the corporate CSR. We give an indication of what we know. The planning comes from the field, and it is for us to approve that or disapprove that. So I think there's definitely a lot of flexibility. If I'm looking at a 5-year plan, it would be totally inappropriate for me to say that, my 5-year plan is frozen. And in the midst of year 2, if there is a flood situation there or a drought, I'm not going to budge because my plan is frozen. No, absolutely not. I think very realistically one plans, and there is enough flexibility. However, there is flexibility within a certain structure.
Okay.
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, perfectly. So, Kaushalendra ji, I am coming to you now. So, this again going back to the first question that was related to climate change thing. So, as Nusrat ji told that the corporates have very limited resource and capability to directly, answer the question of climate change or the impact of climate change on agriculture. In that case, what are the things, or what are the uh, solution that comes to your mind that you would like some corporate to address while working on this problem, say the problem of climate change? You are mute. Yeah.
Yeah. Climate change, uh, see, climate change affects agriculture and people living in that area in many ways. One is direct economic impact, like it will destroy your crop and all. Another most important also is it may lead to loss of lives, lives of human as well as your livestock, like cattle, your poultry, goats, and all those stuffs. And for last 3 years, we have been witnessing this. As an organization, what we have adopted, first and foremost, is how we can raise awareness about this. Like, if you know there is going to be incessant rain for next 3-4 days, in next 3-4 days, climate data is saying, weather data is saying in next 3-4 days there are going to be very, very heavy rainfall continuous 3-4 days. So can you build a network of your volunteers, your team at the grassroots level, so that they can at least adopt method or at least move to the upper area to save their lives? Another aspect is how you can minimize the losses, especially come to economic losses of crop. Here, I think CSR in both the things can play a very, very greater role. First in awareness also, and in this also, why promoting varieties with here we need collaboration like grassroots NGOs, CSR organization, all those corporates, as well as some research organization like ICAR, uh, local agriculture universities as well, to promote right kind of varieties. Like in Nevada district of Bihar, in last 3 years, we have started promoting lentils only because of climate things, so that in Rabi their crops must not fail, and they have something so that they can have something to fulfill their needs. They can sustain themselves, and lentil also a climate friendly crop. Another aspect is, can you promote right kind of technology like zero tillage farming? I think CSR corporate can do this. CS zero tillage farming. Uh, and other aspect is now link water with this. As Nusra ji already pointed out, watershed things that comes under the climate. If you really want to manage your climate in the given area, watershed specific approach becomes really very necessary to adopt. So all just how you are managing the water, how you are going to manage with the satellite data or weather data, and cropping pattern. Here, there is one more important factor that we have adopted, incorporated the it was not new things, but it was traditionally our farmers have been doing, but for last 40 years they had stopped doing crop rotation in other way around. Usually what we in last 40 years we have taught our farmers is keep doing, keep taking cash crop every season. So we have brought in, no, we need some other crop as well to sustain, to conserve our soil, water, as well as to not become one of the agent of climate change also. Important part is not only fight off with climate change, also how we must not become one of the agent of climate change. So taking all these accounts, I must say there is a very big opportunity. In my opinion, CSR organization are capable, I must not say knowledge wise, but they can facilitate the collaborations. They have this capacity to facilitate the collaboration, have this capacity to bring in knowledge of the best of the technologies available, so that local community, farmers, women, youth can deep dive into those technology and can adopt. I would also like to quote an example. Uh, there is an organization based out of Bangkok, and RHYMES we call it, and it's a multi governmental organization. Different Asian country have come together and created this organization to address the challenge of climate. And with RHYMES, we have created farmers group in every villages to address the challenge of climate change. And in those groups, every week we organize discussion about the climate data. okay, next week climate data, temperature is going to be this, rainfall is going to be this. So what could be our strategy? Can we irrigate the field? Should we irrigate the field or not? Should we till the field or not? Should we provide our fertilizer dose or not? So small, these kind of micromanagement is going to be the key and very important in near future. So I think corporate can, and with the NGO can together design the system to transmit these data as well as doable and actionable points to the farmers in more sustainable way. Yeah, go on.
Okay. So we have our third panelist also with us, Mr. Ashwini Saxena. So let me introduce him first, and then we'll move ahead in our program. Sir, may I request you to on your video, Mr. Saxena. So Ashwini Saxena is CEO, JSW Foundation, and as two of our panelists have given their thoughts and views in the very beginning of the program, I would request Mr. Saxena also to just delve into the topic of this sustainability and resilience of agriculture, and how CSR can make, you may say, a positive impact on this goal, how the corporates can make a positive impact on this goal through their CSR. So, Mr. Saxena, are you listening me? I can see the icon written Mr. Ashwini Saxena, but maybe I'm not reaching. My voice is not reaching to him. So we'll get him going forward in the program. But getting back to the question answer. So Nusrat, I have one question that why agriculture, even after, and I'm not asking this question to you as the head of CSR SDFC. I'm asking this question to you as a CSR professional who represents all the corporates in this CSR forum. So why agriculture has not caught the imagination of the corporates as the other, like the most popular two sectors, education and health, have caught? Although we can see that how big is this agriculture sector, and how much impact can be made only through this agriculture, even on health and education. If agriculture is sustainable, if we can be successful in increasing the income of the farmers, that is going to directly impact the level of education and health also. But uh, I'm not saying, because this, just to clarify myself, I am not against going the funds going to education and health, but as the session is on agriculture, so I am being the agriculture's advocate now, and now asking you this question. You are on mute.
Yeah. So, Bhuvan, I would, differ here. While I do understand, and traditionally also we've seen a bulk of support always going towards education. However, agriculture is definitely an area of interest and of growing interest. And you've seen multiple corporates working on excellent programs on village development. I think when you're talking about village development, when you're talking about livelihood skilling, a lot of the work that's actually happening on agriculture gets clubbed into these various buckets. So you might not, it doesn't stand out the way the numbers do stand out for say an education, because these are pure educational programs. But I think definitely when you're working there, you do see some excellent work happening on the field. Agriculture is also something which is not a very easy field to work in and see impact, right? You need the right level of partners that are working. In fact, to turn this question around, I would also say that there is an increasing difficulty that we as corporates find, face to find the right partner to execute a particular program in geography. When I'm telling you that I'm running my rural development program in 19 states, And because it is holistic in nature, it sometimes becomes extremely difficult to get the right partner which can bring in synergies on all fronts. So, you, like, for example, you will find a particular organization which is excellent in market linkage, but may not have the wherewithal to do something on NRM. So, I think also when one talks about working in rural development and especially in agriculture and stuff like that, there is also a need of sharing between partners, between execution partners and organizations in terms of their thoughts and their expertise, to actually translate into a strong program. A CSR intervention will only take off when when there is absolute certainty to a acceptable degree on the impact in a community. And till that is not demonstrated, it is extremely difficult to sort of how do you say, to actually adopt that particular project under its CSR. The other thing is also, of course, and I mean, I don't think this is rocket science, so I would probably wouldn't hesitate to share this, but also the cities are more visible. The work in cities is definitely more high on visibility, rather than working in far-flung rural area on agriculture. So I think a mix of these two is traditionally what I think may be stopping larger CSR investments on agriculture.
Yeah. Mr. Ashwini Saxena, can you hear me? Mr. Saxena, you are on mute. If you are speaking, then we can't hear you. Okay. So, Kaushalendra, I'm coming to you now, and this is for the market linkage thing that Nusrat ji was also talking about, and you also in your initial statement talked about this particular factor very much, and in fact your whole business model and your whole social work also started with this market linkage philosophy only. So now I just want to understand, because whenever we are talking about increasing the income level of farmers, marketing of agri produce, marketing of agri crops come foremost. So in what way the CSR can help, and what are the ways through which CSR can help in strengthening the marketing of agri produce, so that the individual farmer could be benefited? You are on mute, Kaushalendra. Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Bhuvan, for taking up this question. See, traditionally, what happens when it comes to market linkage? We are trained, we are nurtured, and we are trained in a way, we are coached in a way that when it comes to marketing, okay, you have produced your crop, you have done your harvesting, now we will go and we will identify different players who could retail your produce, who could transport your produce. That's a traditional way of thinking. What we in last 12 years we have changed in Bihar, Jharkhand, can our farmers do the same kind of marketing? Like I would like to quote an example of a strawberry farming that we have introduced in Bihar and Jharkhand. All the farmers we have facilitated, we have provided them, trained them how to do the packaging, how provided them infrastructure, right infrastructure like crates, plastic punnets, so that you can have all those 6 in a bag, and provided them their sticker, designed their stickers, their logo, their brand, and now their produce is reaching to the market. So same produce where a strawberry farmers could have got only rupees 100 to 150 per kg. Now they are getting rupees 400 per kg, because all those elements of marketing, basic elements of marketing, we have provided to them so that they can do the packaging and all those stuffs at their end. Another aspect is transportation. logistics, it plays a very, very crucial role. How farmers can take their produce from point A to point B. In most of the cases, wherever we work and with our funders, we try to subsidize transportation in initial years. Again, I am highlighting this, try to subsidize. We need this change, mindset change. It always comes to us, why do we need to subsidize logistics? What for initial 1-2 years, wherever we work, initiate our project, we subsidize transport. How does it help? Slowly it starts building the ecosystem around. Okay, once they say the traders and wholesaler, okay, there are some villages from where farmers are coming regularly for selling their produce in the mandi. So slowly they start building their infrastructure. At first go, you cannot imagine that big transporter or wholesaler can hire a pickup truck and go to the villages. So somewhere we need to have this mindset change. Another thing is to do the marketing of the produce, especially in eastern part of the India, you need economy of scale. You cannot think of, especially when your 91% of the farmers are small and marginal. You cannot think that a small farmers can take their produce. So that's where we focused on also creating farmers institutions. Farmer institutions managed by progressive farmers, owned by progressive farmers. So they can together collectively decide where to go and where to sell. And in addition to that, in some areas, we have built mandis. We have built market mandis of in 1 bigha, 2 acre of land. And surprising part is all those lands are donated by the farmers or local temple trusts. It is not government who has donated the lands. Lands are donated by the farmers and local trust and all those bodies. And we had approached CSR funds to help us to provide the fund to build those infrastructure. And all those mandis are managed by those small farmers. We have formed the committees of wholesalers, farmers, and vendors who are doing the trading business over.
So, Kaushalendra ji, I'm interrupting. So, when you approached the corporates for the CSR fund for these works, what was your experience?
Experience wise, as Nusrat ji directly pointed out, that we have to live in real world. Everybody of us know, everybody of us want to live in big cities and all. Everybody of us don't want to travel to Kishanganj on or Charan. Even if whenever we approach, first thing that most of the court say, Bihar, it's off the track for, okay, we can consider Bihar. Then you choose the area nearby Patna, because we have mandates. Well, they have some different kind of mandates. So at times I always say, if you have mandate like you only want to work in 90 kilometer perimeter of a capital city, then how you can be going to bring the systematic change? Because the real farmers live in other part. And that's one of the major, again I'm saying, it's not the issue of the corporate as per se. I have not found the in the policy of any corporate. Again I am saying it is something to do with the person who are managing the affairs in the corporates. Like take the example of SDFC. They are working in 19 states in remotest part of the, I have seen in they are working in Bihar and Jharkhand as well, and other part of the country as well. So Bhuvan, again I am highlighting this. It's also something to do with the team that corporates have to manage these affairs.
Bhuvan, I would also like to add something
Yeah,
here.
please.
To be fair to my peers and other corporates also, I think this issue can't be looked at in isolation. That it is someone there making a decision, and either the person thinks in favor of rural or not. But I think one needs to know, okay, how is the approach being done also. Because very honestly, if one is looking at coming for CSR support purely to build these mandis, a support a corporate person may not approve of this under CSR. If it is looked at holistically end to end, if you're asking me, would I or have I built these mandis within the clusters that I am working? Yes, I have. We've even provided solar lights to these mandis because we've seen what a phenomenal difference even providing light in these mandis makes, to the overall transactions and the sale that can happen. It also depends on how this project is tied in properly to show what is going to be the impact. And I think and I come from the social sector as well, so I've seen both sides. So I can say that is also a challenge of the social sector. One needs to be able to convince, when you're going in for a project support or funding, in terms of what exactly is the impact that you're overall going to likely depict. And I think that having said, there's no reason why something like this should be refused by, let alone HDFC Bank, but any of my peers. Sorry,
Okay,
that's it.
okay. Right. So just one info about this session, that we are approaching to the last of this session now. 10 minutes are left, and so I am going to ask my last question to you, Nusrat, and then in the meantime, I would request the viewers that they may put their questions here in the chat box, and I will ask after my question. I will ask those questions if any come. So, Nusrat ji, one question that I would like to ask, that whenever we talk in terms of putting the funds, we always, and because tangibility is a major factor in CSR thing, and so we always go for the projects where there is tangibility, where there could be perfect kind of calculation that okay, we have got this thing. Not necessarily you are saying so. I'm just coming to you. If it is not necessary, then why not the funds are being put to the agri research? Because this is a field, this is a area where the studies say that this is the only area where if you put 1 rupees, it comes back in 8 rupees. The other sectors in education, in health, or in any say scientific research, that ratio could be 1 rupees, 1.5 rupees, 2 rupees, but in agriculture 1 rupees comes back as 8 rupees, as the studies say. So why not the CSR? I don't think more than 5% or 6% of the total CSR funds that come to agriculture goes to the research thing, maybe lesser than that. So why
Absolutely.
is this?
So let me put it this way, Bhuvan. I agree with you completely that research on agriculture is extremely essential, because if we are talking about increasing productivity, if we are talking about climate resilient crops, and if we are talking about quickly converting, increasing productivity for our farmers, research is very, very essential and required. Let me put it this way. I mean, a lot of corporates are supporting a lot of enterprises. Okay, we are supporting a lot of startups working in the field of education, health, various other things. How many have we actually seen in the field of agriculture? And second is, where is the adoption happening? If even if there is a startup which we have supported, which has come up with a particular technology for agriculture, and has depicted ROI on that, how many projects on the grassroots, how many grassroots implementations are actually happening, adopting that? I think there is a need for mindset change also in terms of execution, to be open minds and adopt this technology and test it out on the field. I think once that starts, the investments and the visibility for research will also start. Yes, I agree that research is very often not on the agenda for a lot of corporates and the focus of their CSR. I think one area why this is possible is because research is something that I think the mindset of boards, the mindsets of individual, is where you want to see a very tangible difference made to a particular person on field. And for research, you have to have the patience to be able to see that. Funding a research is not going to give you returns immediately. It's not going to be giving you that instant gratification of seeing a transformation on field. And I think that is where certain areas do lose out.
Okay.
Having said that, I do agree with you that it's extremely critical to invest in research.
Okay, right. So now we have some questions, and some questions are for you, which I will start with. So,
Sure.
Somin Lahiri asks you, what should be the flow for project? First, need to make projects and put responsibilities for NGO services providers, then approach funds, or first funds on place and then act on it. So, complementary question is if anybody collaborate for project, then how to distribute responsibilities? So it is for the NGO side. So if you collaborate with some NGOs, then how to distribute responsibilities, and would you like to first uh, place funds and then act, or first need to make the project, get the project ready, and then you will decide on the funds?
Okay, so there's really no one solution or one approach that is an ideal approach. I'll tell you what we think is best. I think first it's important to have a partnership with both entities, whether it is the corporate and the execution partner. I think it's important that they are on the same wavelength and they have the same objectives. Once that is done, then planning out a program becomes much very very how do you say, uh, it goes very smoothly, because then you are completely aligned to each other's objectives. So that's key, and that's the first. After that, it is the program, because there are a lot of other nuances in terms of where are you going to actually implement it, what is the approach that is being taken. Once these basics are in place, there's program planning, and then you assign responsibilities. Assigning responsibilities will differ, whether you are a foundation, whether you are a corporate CSR, where the funds are coming from. From a corporate CSR point of view, my involvement or my responsibility would be ensure that the funding is continuous and there's no stop in the funding. And also, second is to monitor what is happening on field, and that's my responsibility. Whereas the NGO's responsibility would be definitely to execute, and to ensure that we are aligned to the objectives and are able to achieve that.
Okay, okay. So we have now only 3 minutes, and I have two questions, one for Kaushalendra
Sure.
and one for Nusrat. So you both have 1.5 minutes each for each question.
Okay.
So Kaushalendra ji, this question is for you. I mean, Mr. Pradeep Ghosal has in fact asked this question for both the panelists. In the second question that I will ask you, Nusrat, you can have
Sure.
your view also on this question. So on the promotion of traditional seeds, he wants to know what is the view of the panel, that how can CSR work on the for the promotion of traditional seeds. In fact, you had pointed this also out while you were making your initial comments. So Kaushalendra ji, first your turn.
We work closely with the farmers on this aspect, and as an organization, we have taken up this policy that we are not going to force the farmers to either adopt the traditional or continue with the traditional or give up the traditional. Whenever farmer decide, okay, and we try to give the details of pro and cons of both the traditional varieties, new varieties coming up, how new variety is going to change yourself, how traditional variety is going to be your boon for you or doing something bad for you. And after that, if some set of farmer decides, okay, we want to continue with the traditional variety and we want to preserve, we do facilitate, and we have also established seed bank especially for this, so that traditional variety could be saved. And we have found with our limited work that traditional varieties are actually good to good for farm sustainability, especially when it comes to erratic change in weather parameters, temperature and rainfall. So in certain areas, we do advocate, okay, if you have the very good traditional variety, you must preserve it. And we are here to facilitate, we are here to establish the seed bank, and we are here to how you can take it to the next level. And in certain cases, we have also worked closely with the research organization where we have approached them
Okay.
how we can build upon this traditional variety to get more productivity.
Okay, I'm really sorry. I'm behaving like a TV anchor, but it is now the time is almost over. So last question to Nusrat ji, and this is more of a academic kind of question. So you may answer it as according to your convenience in the shortest possible time.
Sure.
Can you share some of the CSR strategies? So Vinod Kumar is asking this question, that can you share some of the CSR strategies applied in agri and had good success rate? And first, your very brief view on that seed thing.
So, very quickly, just to talk about the seed bank, the indigenous seed, I think traditional seeds is always something that we prefer. And when I say we, I really mean our partner organizations. That's what they promote. And yes, as Kaushalendraji said, you can't really force farmers to adopt. You can encourage, you can train, and you can convince, you can demonstrate. And again, how do we do that? Yes, we do a lot of trainings. We do have seed banks, as we said. In fact, in most of our programs, we have seed banks where we encourage farmers, because as we've all seen, the actual investment in farming reduces drastically if the dependency on seeds reduces.
Okay.
So that's for the seed bank.
Yeah.
On the other question, I mean, I am a little sort of out of water in terms of how do I respond to that. Because while I would love to talk about various programs that we have done pan India and various interventions that we have seen working, I may not be the right person to actually get into the technical in terms of what exactly has worked and not, because that's not really something that I'm well versed with. But I can see that each geography has its different challenges, and there is no vanilla solution for all of them. As I depicted, I also mentioned in Kerala, we've done tremendous work with farmers, and that's really worked for us. Similarly, in Maharashtra, also, we've done a sizable amount of work. In fact, if I remember, in one of the villages, we've actually worked on subsurface salinity, where we've actually managed to convert some amount of land to agricultural land using certain techniques. So there have been a lot of adoption of techniques, but if there is any particular thing that you would want to understand from us in terms of strategy or case study, then happy to connect with you. You can always write to us, and we'll be happy to share any case studies.
Thank you so much, Nusrat ji. Kaushalan ji, may I request you to put on your video now, as you only have to say thanks to the audience and take my thanks. So thank you so much to both of you, and you just gave so much of time on a weekday, and you be just part of this whole discussion. Thank you so much, Nusrat ji and Kaushalan ji.
Thank you so much.
Apresh ji, you please take the baton now.
Thank you very much, Bhuvanji. You've done a marvelous job of moderating this session. And Nusrat ji, thank you very much for joining us. And Kaushalenji ji, happy birthday to you.
Oh,
Yeah, thank
happy
you.
birthday.
Yeah,
Wish you a
thank
very
you.
happy birthday.
You would have told us this thing earlier, otherwise it is now. So happy birthday, ma'am.
Happy birthday, Kaushalendraji.
Yeah, happy.
Thank you very much. Now we move on to the next session, which is led by some Mr. Govindraj Ethiraj, a finest journalist and the founder of India Spend.
Thanks.
Hi, Govind.
Hi,
Over
how are
to
you?
you. I am fine. Over to you now.
Thank you so much. Let me plunge straight into it and welcome my guests and panelists, Bhaskar Chatterjee, Garima Dadlich, and Jyotsna Beliappa. I do hope you will all be seen and you will switch on your video. Let's move quickly. So the subject is CSR impact visible? Now, it's January 14th, on the 14th of April, 3 months to the date and 7 years from now, we would have completed or seen the completion of a 7-year run of the CSR regulations, which were mandated on the 1st of April 2014. A lot has changed since then, including in the economy itself and the ability of companies to support this 2% mandatory contribution that they have to make of their average net profit. And the question, of course, now is, as we look back and look ahead, what has this contribution done? More importantly, how much of it can we measure in a way that we feel satisfied with the outcomes and for the objective that it was intended? And also, how have companies, organizations used this as an opportunity to do something that's really good and contribute to the greater good that is the growth and prosperity of this country? That's the second part. The third is, what are the lessons that have been learned, which in some ways tell us about what's worked and what's not? And finally, as we look ahead beyond the 7 years that this mandatory legislation has been in force, how do we use this as a force of good to achieve everything that we wanted to when we set out to do so? So those are some of the questions that we are posing today. My guests are, like I said, Bhaskar Chatterjee, Garima Dadlich, and Jyotsna Beliappa. What I'm going to do is ask each of them to speak for about 4 or 5 minutes each to talk about the subject as they see it from their vantage point. Bhaskar Chatterjee as the Director General and CEO of the Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs. Garima, who's an associate professor at the Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs, also runs the National Foundation for CSR. She also is a lawyer by training. And Jyotsna, who runs Blue Sky Assurance, which does a CSR inspection and therefore has a ringside view of how things are working, particularly for those who are putting in hard-earned money behind it. So let me, on that note, ask Bhaskar Chatterjee to kick off proceedings. And you have the next 5 minutes to speak on, is CSR impact visible? And that's the key question that we are asking as we are here today on the 14th of January 2021. It's over to you. Okay, so we have a Zoom problem. So let's keep moving. Jyotsna, do you want to go first?
I was hoping to go the last, but yes, let's go.
Yeah.
So hello, everybody who's with us on this webinar today, and especially under Govind's moderation, we expect to have some very interesting discussion. So my take on whether CSR is visible, I do believe that it is visible, but there is a huge scope for improvement. I'd say that it's visible, but it's a bit hazy. There's a huge scope for improvement. Like Govind said, I have a very good, as an auditor, CSR assurance auditor, I have a very good view of what people are, what are the corporates focusing on to report, to talk about, how are they designing the projects and all that. And I also see a beautiful, I really credit what we are doing in India in the type of metadata that we are collecting. There, especially when we align ourselves to the Niti Aayog and the India Development Goals, SDGs and all that. So we have some good metadata, and if just going by the data, I think we are seeing a lot of visibility, be it in the, in looking at some of the great impacts that we have done, like number of children in the age group of 6 to 13 who are, out of school. We've done good progress. Now, how much is their literacy or how much do they learn during that time in school is an issue. So the point that I wanted to make for this discussion is that we do see we see visibility, but where we are sort of lacking is the issue of context. We are like, suppose if you look at the amount of money spent on CSR on the education, the percentage of students in grade 10th, the literacy levels is very poor. In some countries, as less as 40% of the children in the grade 10 can't even read a sentence. But And then when you compare it with the number of, the thousands of crores that people are spending, corporates are spending on CSR, education part of it, there seems to be a mismatch. And that is what I mean to say when I talk about we could get better visibility if we could put it in context. So as the country matures, more visibility on CSR impacts will improve. I mean, and I have other panel members who are going to be talking about some of the new developments that are happening. And I'm very, very positive about the type of improvements that we are going to see in terms of visibility. There is also a sort of activism that is happening, which requires visibility. I think considering the fact that 55,000 crores has been spent in the last 7 years on CSR projects, accumulated 55,000 crores, 500 billion US dollars. We somewhere will need to ask, where did it go? And that is where the visibility becomes extremely important. And that is where we'll have to bring in a context. So it's not just good enough to say I spent 100 crores spending or educating 50,000 women. It's also important to talk about I spent 100 crores in educating 50,000 women, which are 3% of the uneducated population. Yeah. So when we talk about context, we are talking about from where we are and where we need to go. So when we talk about visibility, what is currently happening in India, when we're just talking about numbers without a context, it shows progress. But when you talk about numbers in context to the larger picture, we talk about it, it becomes an achievement. So my take for this discussion is that visibility is there, but there's a huge scope of improvement. And my suggestion in this would be talking about in context. Let's get more in relation to the numbers and just not quote random numbers, which seriously doesn't make any meaning. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. Can you give me one example before I go to Dr. Chatterjee? And Garima too, could you leave your videos on so I know you're there and I can come to you? Okay. Joseph, when you think of context or the lack of it, what's the one instance that bothers you the most or concerns you the most particularly when you were just speaking about it?
So, while we are talking about CSR and we are talking about social environment, I want to talk about an environment incident where a very big corporate basically said that they removed 5 billion pieces of plastics out of the environment. Yeah, through their packaging initiatives or whatever. 5 billion plastic was the big word that they used. It was big numbers, but they did not talk. It was actually less than 2% of the plastics that they put in the environment. Yeah. So I just wanted to share this example that yes, 5 billion picking out or moving out 5 billion plastic pieces from the environment is really good progress. But it would be much better to say that, yes, we removed 2% of our plastics and we are aiming to remove 5% in the next 5 years or 10 years, or what opens up for a whole lot of collaboration, partnership,
Right.
So that would be
right. That's a good example. Okay, Dr. Chatterjee, it's over to you.
Yeah, sorry, I missed your first call. There are always these glitches to go, but lovely to see you, Jyotsna. Lovely to see you, Garima. Yes, indeed. 1st of April 2014. That's when the law really came into operation. And I'm very glad to see that from then on, we're about to get to the 1st of April 2021, almost 7 years. It's been a long journey. And it's important for us to realize that the law itself was in many ways alien to the country. It was alien to the entire world. It was the very first attempt anywhere on the planet to actually formalize and bring in legislation. And I can say with some conviction that the first year or two, the corporates found it difficult to engage with the new law. There were mental block issues, there were operational issues, there were perception issues, and a whole lot of stuff like that. It was only after the first 2 years had elapsed that corporates really began to see this kind of a legislation as actually an opportunity for them to demonstrate their commitment to the society to which they belong. And I see then from around the early part of 2016 a very positive change in the attitude of corporates and also the preparedness of NGOs. You know, when I made this law, there were two or three important things that were important here. One, it is a spending law. Therefore, you must spend. And Jyotsna rightly said that yes, we quote numbers on spends. That is the first part. If you spend, then only you will be conscious of how you spent it, where you spent it, and can it be spent better. But if you don't spend at all, you're wasting your time. So in the first place, it is a spending law, which means 2% of your average net profits, right? The second part is that this is a triumvirate or a triangular approach in which the government is the facilitator. Its role is just to facilitate and nothing more. It is for the corporate entity, which comes under the scheme of the law, to provide the resources, the supervision, and the assistance. But the work at the grassroots level is neither to be done by government nor by the corporate. The third arm of this triangle, which is the NGO, the implementing agency as we call it, it is that which actually implements on the ground. And it is when these three are in perfect cohesion that you really begin to get results on the field. And when you begin to see what is actually being done on the ground, that is when you realize that can CSR be seen? Yes, when things work in synergy. Over these years, as Jyotsna rightly said, a fairly large amount of money has been spent. Is it visible? And she rightly said, yes, of course it is visible, but of course it can be more visible than ever before. And there are strategies, I'm sure Garima will elaborate on that, as to how we can make them even more visible than they are now. One part, Jyotsna herself is a specialist on this, the audit part. Just now, yesterday, in fact, the ICAI has released the first ever guidelines in the entire planet, which guides auditors as to how they should audit CSR. I mean, think where CSR has gone from something that people just did as a feel good, I'm feeling good today, so let's do some CSR, that kind of intermittent stuff that happened before 2013, to a very now strategized CSR approach that we have today. I'll end my opening remarks only at this stage by saying that we have come a long way. As always, there's much, much more to do. But in what we have achieved, we should definitely take pride. I know you're going to ask me for one example, so I'll take that question from you and answer it straight away before I hand over it back to you. Let me say this with my own eyes, that 3 or 4 days ago, I was in Konark. I belonged to the Odisha cadre of the IAS in my heydays, so it was a pleasure to go back. Actually, when I drafted Schedule 7, as I wrote it out, I had completely forgotten about culture and heritage. And I remember that a few minutes before we sent the draft of Schedule 7 to Parliament, it suddenly occurred to me that I was Director Cultural Relations of the Government of India for 5 years. And imagine me forgetting it. So I shoved it into Schedule 7 at the very last minute before the paper was snatched from my hands. And I'm so happy to see how Indian Oil Corporation has now taken over a large part of the maintenance of the Konark temple, which, as you know, is a 10th century temple, subject to tremendously strong, salty winds from the ocean and therefore erosion. And the way that the Archaeological Survey of India, the IOC, has completely transformed the area around the temple and redone so much of the cultural heritage in its preservation was a pride to see. And in many ways, it warmed the cockles of my heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chatterjee, for that confession as well, which I'm sure will be in your book when it comes out. Like a quick question on the handbook for audit. What is that handbook from the Institute of Chartered Accountants responding to? Is it because companies did not have an idea, or were things not being used properly? And what could it do? I mean, for those who are listening, I'm sure this will be useful.
Yeah, the primary call was the fact that a traditional auditor is a financial auditor. It looks at, vouchers, balance sheets, profit and loss accounts, analyzes and stuff like that. But when you go to social audit, in terms of what you do in terms of social outputs, traditionally our audit courses, audit learning that we teach does not cover that aspect. So ICI has not only been putting this thing together for a while, they've actually been conducting courses and papers on how to do audit for social programs. And this handbook is a compilation for all auditors. Nowadays, because the money spends are high, corporates are insisting on very strong audits of their CSR outputs. So this you will find very, very useful, and I'm sure Jyotsna will also find it useful. It just issued yesterday, so it'll be something nice for everyone.
Right. Thank you for that. Garima, it's over to you.
Thank you, Govind. Thank you for inviting me with such a learned panel members. And I greatly thank India CSR to organize this kind of a panel discussion. So I would also like to, just begin where Dr. Chatterjee has ended. So I will also say that, corporate social responsibility, I mean, certainly we always have a long history of CSR in India, and I will definitely not go to those historical things, but India has the world's richest tradition of CSR. And we have seen philanthropy, Tata, Birla, Godrej, Bajaj in the phase one from 1850 to 1914. And then subsequently, we have seen the Gandhian trusteeship theory, which is very much related to the spirit of the CSR legislation. So that is the phase two, which began from 1910 to 1960. And then phase three, we saw, emergence of the public sector undertakings to ensure that, better distribution of wealth in society. So PSU played a major role. So that's the phase three. And the phase four, I will simply say that, 1980 onwards, CSR is characterized as a sustainable business strategy. So as mentioned by Dr. Chatterjee sir also, that CSR is, initially it was taken as a just to do when if you wish to do, and then it became a law. And now over the last 7 years, it's not just a compliance, but it is more of a, compliance in spirit. And the CSR law mentioned in Companies Act clearly highlights that it is a board-driven strategy. And certainly there are tripartite involved there, but it's completely, as mentioned by sir, that government is the facilitator and it is the board which has to take, those decisions. So I would say that, now CSR has emerged as a sustainable business strategy, and companies are encouraged not only just to spend the 2% of their profits, but also to think on the impact, whether it is visible. So therefore, we are having this discussion. Now, let me just give you quickly, throw some light on the impact of CSR on society. There is already around 70,000 crore have been spent on CSR. And there is a great impact of CSR on society in the terms of, increase in disposable income, better healthcare facilities, education. So there, as we know that there are different sectors, but we see that there's a lot of spend on education and health initiatives. And I would also like to share that, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs has also launched this National CSR Awards, which is the only sovereign award. And I can say that it's a very honorable presidential award. So I'll just quote a few examples from there, that if we talk about, improving the rural livelihoods and protecting the environment, through the farmer-centric integrated watershed management, we saw a great impact, that there is a good management of water structure, which has greatly enhanced the crop productivity and income levels by 5 folds. There's also an example of the private organization, we very well known as a project Nani Kali, which has groomed 31,000 youths to get jobs. So definitely the impact is visible on ground in terms of all Schedule 7. But here I would also like to say that in Schedule 7 there are still certain activities which has not gained that much of importance from corporates. So there are always two sides of that debate also. But yes, just to begin and just to quote few examples here, I would definitely say that the impact is visible, and as mentioned by sir also, that this impact is visible due to this tripartite role of government as a facilitator. And also let me mention that the ministry, even in the recent high level committee on CSR, has very categorically mentioned that the government is intending to move towards self governance. Therefore, it's just a direction, but the companies are now taking it very seriously. They are implementing in spirit, and not just 2%. They are ensuring that they invest where there is a need, so that, because if they establish the need, then only the impact will be visible. So that is what the organizations are doing by themselves. So, and I will certainly reserve my few more other initiatives taken by government in the subsequent discussion. But briefly, just give me a minute here. That let me just mention that the ministry is working extensively on bringing out the CSR exchange platform. So, which is the platform aims to again bring all these stakeholders together at a one particular website or a platform where companies can even highlight their impact. So it's not only that we talking about whether the impact is visible. It's like anybody goes on that platform and can see that this is the initiative and this is a result, and somebody can simply replicate the same in other needy areas. Similarly, the implementing agencies are also, they can also learn from the best practices. So it's not just within the documentation of a corporation within their annual report, but it will be a public platform where everybody can share and can highlight that kind of an impact. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that, Garima. So just quick question here. So you stressed on how companies and organizations are growing beyond that 2%. So what's driving that? I mean, I can think of some logical reasons, but the way you've studied it, what's driving it, and how is it being manifested, or how are we seeing the impact of that additional investment and focus?
Yeah. So just to answer it, I would say that they are not taking this only as a spend initiative or as a tick box compliance. And now with this, emergence of this concept of ESG, or we call it responsible business, the companies are not only thinking about CSR, they are making CSR very much, ingrained in their business strategy. As we know that one of the impact which is very much visible is about, even their profits have been increased. There are researches on that particular thing, the brand enhancement. There are big companies who highlight the CSR project and they simply write a tagline there that hum steel bhi banate hain. So the kind of message it gives to the stakeholders is that their prime importance is for ensuring the community good. So what driving them is that there is a strong business case for doing it in spirit, and moving further from CSR to ESG and to the responsible business initiatives. It definitely helps. It attracts investors. It makes even employee feel good. And they can spend and they can come together. So there are a lot of such strong business cases.
Okay. Can I come back to you, Dr. Chatterjee? So a couple of questions. One is that the theme for this discussion is CSR impact visible, with a question mark. So if we pose that question, then how are we answering it? I mean, I think the answers that I've got so far suggest that there is a lot of work being done. There is more work being done than perhaps being asked for, but there is maybe contextually, there is a problem of contextual presentation, as Jyotsna talked about. But to come back to the original question, is it visible? If it's not visible, to pose the counter question, why are we saying that it's not visible? And if so, what is the course correction that we need to do, if so, at this point of time? You're on mute.
Straight answer to your question is that in terms of visibility, I would say that we've come around 60 to 65%. And that is not bad. It's pretty good. Is it showing up? Yes, because many corporates are actually showcasing their achievements. To use the word showed a couple of times, as Garima rightly said. When there is pride in doing something and you showcase it, then you also are prepared to put it to the test so that people can go there and say, hey, is it really showing or not? So I would say that yes, there is pride and there is also showcasing, which is a good thing for us to understand that CSR is now being visible. Let me take a crass example to show you why it is not visible. I was sitting, and I sit on so many juries, but one very prominent bank came across, and it gave me a bit of a tickle in my sense of humor, saying that, we do so much CSR, Dr. Chatterjee, you will be amazed. Last year, we actually saved 100 metric tons of paper. And I said, wow, that's terrific. Of course, I can't see that paper, but how did you do that? And I said, we stopped all our junior executives from taking printouts on their, printing machines. And I said, look, what kind of CSR is this? I mean, surely you've got to move away from, obfuscation. Come out into the open and say, what is it that you've done on the ground for real people and undertaking real programs? So what I'm trying to say is that that initial part of saying things that really didn't mean anything, the kind of thing that Jyotsna was saying, we are touching the lives of 2 million people. When I hear sentences like this, my ears actually curdle because this is going nowhere. What we don't need is anecdotal evidence. What we want to believe is in real-time data. 2 or 3 quick things I'd like to bring in here. One, the National CSR Awards, about which Garima spoke, were a way of incentivizing the way that CSR operates with corporates and with NGOs. I actually started that concept before I left the IICA. I'm glad it's now become operational. They actually go and see on the field and they verify. And it is only then that the Prime Minister gives away those awards. These are national awards. And the level of competition is just incredible. So it shows you that when we actually highlight achievements, we value that which is visible. The second point I wanted to say was that in national emergencies, such as the COVID one now, government reaches out to that law which we passed in 2013, saying that now let all COVID activities be covered under Schedule 7. Let's set up the PM Cares Fund, again under Schedule 7. So in times of real difficulty, this is also where the CSR legislation helps. And you can see visibly now how much has actually happened in the world of COVID. Can we hide that? Lastly, yes, CSR is very strongly board driven. What does that ensure? That the finest minds in the company are involved in the CSR program. They strategize, they decide what's to be done. And because CSR decisions are taken at the highest levels in companies, they ensure that that visibility comes through. And last, more and more corporates are understanding that you have to be able to say where that money went, where the outcomes are, not just the output. So do very good assessment, do very careful assessment of the impact that your programs actually leave on the ground. That's all I want to say now.
Okay, so I'm going to come to impact in a moment, but the example that you said about this bank saving 100 metric tons of paper, now this is also something that is a reflection of the thinking at the board, or is it something transmission loss downstream?
No, it was the thinking of the board, and I was surprised that it happened because this decision was taken at their board level. But this was in the early days. It probably won't happen now. But at the time when corporates were still not fully aware of, how they should go about it and how they should reach out to, to those parts of society which really needed help and care, not in this sort of, jugglery.
Right. Okay. Maybe, as you said, Dr. Chatterjee, the first couple of years were spent in trying to get a sense and a fix, maybe fudge, as you pointed out, but hopefully the second half of this period of 7 years has seen far more focus and dedication to the cause. So, Jyotsna, can I come back to you now? So if you were to now look forward, so this company, the example that you gave of trying to create an environmental impact by cleaning up the same product that or the byproduct that it puts out in the environment. So it is doing something. It's also doing something good, but the manner in which it is presenting that data is obviously there is a bit of a fudge. So where are we now when you look at a broader scope of companies doing something in a way that people understand its impact and also in a way that really adds positive outcome to the environment at large. So a positive outcome, for instance, would be that I not only, I put out some byproduct or effluent, as the case might be, I clean up everything, and then I also do more to clean up the environment. So that could be the positive. So where are we in that journey?
So, Govindaj, we use the word fudge. I agree with, I might not use the word fudge because it comes with, because of two things. First thing, we as Indians do not like to give anything negative of the project. And I think one discussion which is hugely missing in India is the negative impact of a CSR project. We believe that every project that we do is good and only good. But honestly, we know every project has got a positive impact and a negative impact. When the positive impact is more than a negative impact, we are in the plus side. But nobody talks about the negative impact because as Indians, maybe culturally, we just don't want to be seen with our flaws and all. So to answer your question, I think this is what we were talking about as the country matures, as the law matures. I mean, the type of amendments that we're seeing in the Companies Act, Schedule 7, it's phenomenal. I mean, it's coming out of experience. This could not have been thought of 7 years back, just conceptually, academically. So what I see is that I don't think you'll see too many people saying I did wrong. It's not going to be
let me put that question a little differently. So when you say that there has been a negative impact, what comes to mind?
I'll tell you, we did a program for women empowerment in a very remote village in Rajasthan. Brilliant. For a factory which had less than 10% of women, over a period of 3 years, they managed to get almost 45% of the women. And then it started, plateauing out. It also sort of started dipping. When we went, so when they talked about empowerment of women, they trained them, they used to get their salaries, through the bank, they had ATM cards and all that stuff. But because of the empowerment of women, the men's alcoholism went up. Domestic violence went up because culturally the society would not be able to accept that a woman's earning more than a man. Okay, so when this organization called us in to say, what's happening in this project, and when we did a lot of stakeholder feedback, there was a negative impact. And acknowledging that there is a negative impact of women empowerment helped them to do this program much better. When the next year, when the tranche of funds was a lot on helplines, on de-addiction centers involving men. It was not only women, but it was also about empowering men to take up jobs. So.
But that's a good example of course correction, isn't it?
it's a good example. I'm sorry, it's an example of accepting that there is a negative impact also.
No.
Being broad enough or acknowledging that it's not always CSR always doesn't bring up all good points. Let's be honest. And you know, like they could be. And if you acknowledge that there is a negative impact, you would course correct.
Right. So again, I was asking you about the journey, right? So you talked about you threw the number into the discussion. You said 55,000 crores of rupees have been spent so far. How much of that in your mind has done good before we come to the measurement of it? And how much of it is perhaps a little misguided? I mean, intended well, but not necessarily achieving the objective it was set out to, maybe because the objective itself was not sharp enough.
Yeah, I would put it literally at 55% and 45%. 55%, I believe more good has happened. More good has happened than not good. And at least 45% is floundering. It's groping its way through CSR. You know, it's like Dr. Bhaskar said, you know, like reducing paper is being called as CSR. So I would say, I want to categorically say there's more good happened than bad. But yes, there is a lot which is groping its way around CSR and trying to come up with.
Right. So let's try and look ahead. Dr. Chatterjee, let me come back to you. I don't know if you agree with that 45% estimate, but assuming that we have work to do in terms of aligning or realigning the funds that are being spent, the efforts that are being put in, and the outcomes that we want, what should we be doing? How can we do so, particularly in the years to come? How could we use even COVID-19 and the economic and social shock that we've seen because of that as an input or a trigger to do this, if so? You're on mute.
Yeah, so Jyotsna, 55-45, I said 60-40, we are roughly on the same page. But still, good going.
I wanted to categorically say that there's more good done, you know, let's not say that not good.
Whatever be the crunching numbers. I'd only say this, that what is one way of, let's say, moving from 60-40 to 70-30? I mean, that would be a good achievement. If you were at 70-30, I'd say it's really good. And that's what strategy that was used earlier on in our discussion is vitally important. When corporates in their boardrooms actually plan CSR projects, now you would remember that when I had made the law, I said every single CSR activity must be a project. If it is axiomatic and often quoted as a Chatterjeeism, that if it's not a project, it's not CSR. And why did I projectivize it? Because a project is something that you can assess, you can monitor, you can assign it monies and track it from beginning to end. And when it's finished or even in between, you can do assessment of its impact, and you can also put in corrections as they go along. So one of the important parts of the strategy is get the project conceptualized very carefully. Plan the impact assessment even before you begin the project.
Exactly.
If your objectives are fuzzy, you're pretty much doomed to failure. And therefore, what we said in the law was this: because the best minds in the company are involved in this, therefore the strategization will be good. So that's one way. But I still feel that the strategy aspect needs a lot of more attention than it's been given to so far. This is one way of getting across to it.
So let me go down that path a little more. So when we say, and you know, for those who are listening, are in strategy positions or will be at some point. Now, what is the one input that's missing in your mind when you look at some of these projects or attempted projects? What are the things that are missing, or what is the one or two critical things that are missing? One is the thinking, which you rightly said, which reflects strategy and objective. But apart from that, what's missing so people could maybe focus on that in order to at least get their first part of the act together?
Okay, so straight off, two things I'll mention. One is identifying the need. You go into a village, you see it doesn't have, maybe it has only one school, And they say, okay, let's put another school in here. But if you were to ask the villagers and really do a need assessment, they would say, we have arsenic in our water. For us, getting water and life is far more important than building a second school. And if you'd done that, you would do what is really needed or what would create the maximum impact. So to make CSR need oriented, one. Two, I see that the monitoring is often loose, tardy, ineffectual, intermittent. And that doesn't speak very well of the CSR heads or the CSR committees to which they report. I'm not saying that this is universal. I'm just saying that the project is or has to be very tightly monitored in order to achieve results. And that's a universal law. CSR projects need harder and harsher monitoring. That way we can get better results. And finally, across the world, when you come to anything that needs good outputs, you use standards. Therefore, ISO 9001 and so on and so forth. Is there a standards for Indian CSR? Remember, ISO 26001 happened years ago, done in Europe for the European perception. We've done 7 years of CSR in India. We don't even have basic standards. If you don't have standards, to what will you measure your outcomes? Against what standards? If you don't have a yardstick, how will you measure the mile? And so I'm happy to report that I have been the chief from the board of BIS, the Board of Indian Standards, and we have just submitted to them the first ever standards on Indian CSR. And what will happen then is news for all of us, and I want to say this loud and clear. Very soon when we launch these standards, we're also starting a rating system in the BIS. So as a corporate, you can apply and you will get anything between 1 star to 5 stars. There is already now a race that has gotten off among the best corporates, say, hey, let's apply and see what star rating we get. And if you were a corporate chief and you had your CSR person reporting to you, you would say to the chief, go out there and see how many stars you get. It's not about what you say or I say. It's what about an independent agency rating you tells us what you deserve. So
Right,
this is a very strong new initiative that we've just launched.
Right, and that's a useful input as well here. So and 2 questions. So one is, the example that you used about setting up a school when there is, let's say, a problem with the water supply in that place, and that's you're really saying or you're reflecting a real world example. Am I right?
Correct.
I mean, right. Okay. So now, when the star system that you speak of, in which is more of it's a recognition, is accounts for these kind of things, fit as in projects that are fit to purpose and so on.
Yes. So it measures first your compliance. If you are not compliant, you can't even enter or ask for a rating. But thereafter, it takes 2 levels of audit. Josna, this will be music to your ears. If you are not a scheduled auditor empaneled by the BIS, you cannot audit. So this is not about you submitting papers to the BIS committee and the BIS committee saying, we trust you based on your papers, here's a 5-star rating. It has to go through 2 stages of audit, field verification, and then a full-fledged submission before the BIS audit, the CSR committee, a full-fledged presentation. And only then will you get your star rating. So let's say you applied for 4 stars. The BIS committee can say, sorry, you only deserve 2. Take it or leave it. Then you're free to come back the next year and say, no, I didn't want the 2-star rating. My boss would have killed me. So now I've come back and now I'm ready to get my 4-star. So this will give you incentives. It'll also give you correctionals. It'll give a lot of people a chance to really measure up against the accepted standards in India.
Garima, can I come to you? You know, I think you gave a very beautiful sequencing of how CSR has evolved over the centuries. I would have never thought of CSR going back to the 19th century, leave alone into the last century or this one. So how do you see it as a mindset evolved? I mean, if you look back now and the way it's grown, and if you were to project ahead, are we ready to embrace it in the manner that it should be embraced, given that so many years have passed, you know, or even if you were to use the Gandhi trusteeship principle as one start point and where we are today? And if we need to evolve, and I'm really talking about thinking now, what do we need to do at this as we look ahead?
Yeah, I feel that certainly, the principles or spirits are based on the history, but we have certainly evolved. And as mentioned by the other panel members, 45 or 65. So I will also say that somewhere close to 65% impact we have seen. And what has evolved is something like one is that incorporating into the business strategy. That's the first achievement which the organization, and as mentioned about the CSR audit, let me mention that CSR audit is also something like how companies perform over their social responsibility, and they have been evaluated for that. So that is a kind of evolution where earlier it was just dependent on the philosophy and the culture of a promoter, particularly a person who's owning the company, that whether he wants to spend or don't want to spend, it has now become a mandate. So government has provided a direction, and the companies have even taken up further to incorporate in their strategy. Even let me mention that now we have, we started talking about ISR, individual social responsibility as well. There are examples where the employees are actively being engaged for their organization CSR initiatives. So the concept, these type of concepts, certainly we have
right,
fairly progressed. And for future, I will just briefly mention that what needs to be done. Certainly one is the need assessment and monitoring also, as mentioned by Dr. Chatterjee. Another thing is also about the sustainability of the project, which I would just like to add on with that is extremely important. And the important thing is that now the evolution is this, that now the corporations are joining hands with government, the local government, and targeting those SDG agendas, the Sustainable Development Goals agendas. So when they join hands, there is the entire planning needs to be done, that once the project, so if a company starts a health initiatives in a particular village, they can never come out of that village because the diseases is never going to end. So they need to plan its sustainability, that how involving the community within that particular thing. So I think that is what is the 65%, and the remaining is lacking on those particular parameters and just doing it for compliance. And as mentioned by Jyotsna, that always sometimes one good thing might have an impact on the other, so we need to just weigh it basically.
Right. And that's a very important point. Strategically, how do you ensure that there is sustainability, that the project has life beyond your pulling out of that place? So a couple of quick questions.
The exit, and what I'm trying to highlight is that because the company can't all forever run that project, so the exit needs to be planned even in the beginning.
Right.
And one thing I would just like to add, I'm taking a minute again, is that very much my personal opinion, not an institutional opinion, is that from the negative impact side, let me mention that I see a lot of assessments happening now. I'm talking about an impact assessment, but I do not know about the credibility of such kind of an assessment. And as mentioned that, there has to have a benchmark. So from the beginning, if we, somewhere say that, okay, the project has these objectives to achieve this, and then we, a fair independent assessment needs to be done. But there's a huge, difficulty in this area, and we see everybody is getting impact assessment done just for the sake of doing it. So that needs to be properly planned.
Right. And I think these are very good points. Dr. Chatterjee, can I come to you? We've got only a couple of minutes now because apparently this switches off automatically at 7. So, and the organizers want to come in too. So quick questions to you. The first is from Abhishek Ranjan. Large and mid-sized companies are mandated by CSR law. What would be the motivation for small and medium enterprises to do CSR?
Well, follow the examples of the bigger companies, because one day, aspirationally, the smaller companies are going to become medium. So if they start, there are two ways I can say this very quickly. One, start small, very small, whatever you are attracted to. Two, look for a medium company with which to collaborate, or a bigger company with which to collaborate. So if you use these two strategies, start small and collaborate, partnership, you will get to a beginning. And that's the way to go for me.
Okay. Sudhir Sarni asks you, Dr. Chatterjee.
Just add one thing, just with sir, one second. One is that there is a separate award reserved for MSME. That is also a good enough reason.
That's a good incentive to, yeah, absolutely. Sudhir Sarni
Govinda,
asks,
sorry, I also want to add on to this. I have so many small and medium businesses which are coming and saying, please, let's do our CSR, irrespective of whether it's mandated or not. They are the biggest sector of my business, you know.
Wonderful. So happy to learn that.
Yeah.
one area, Jyotsna, that you can share with us?
One area, automotive.
Okay.
You know, the new renewable batteries and the electric batteries. Automotive area is coming up. Garments. One of my best customer is a garment company.
And what are they doing CSR in? What is the area that they are?
So they're sourcing sustainable garments, sustainable fabrics. So they're working closely with farmers, fair trade, less chemicals, working with agriculturists directly to ensure that there are no middlemen. And the automotive one is, it's a co-sharing ownership of the cars that they drive. Like it's honestly, truly socially responsible.
Okay. So Archana Tomar, who's been quite active actually in the chat, has said quite a few things. But what she says is that if doing good was to be converted into a mindset, there would be a shift in every organization engaging with communities internally and externally. She also says CSR has remained primarily a mandate that's carried out by a few in the organization. Rest of the organization that's expected to give a few hours per year for volunteering, which leads to a dissonance or lack of interest, and is considered to be a burden. So this is feedback for those at the board level, so that you uniformly spread the effort of contribution or participation, I imagine. Dr. Chatterjee, the question to you, your thoughts on CSR spending being focused on supporting operational costs and building capacity of NGOs rather than try and do more of what the state is already doing, like building infrastructure. This is from Sudhir Sani.
Yes, Sudhir, I couldn't support you more. In fact, when we drafted the law, the rules, they say that 5% of the total project cost can actually be used for skill upgradation of the employees of the company as well as the implementing agency with which they work. I had originally written this down as 10%, and the high-level committee which sat actually recommended it should be 10%. Because if that is provided, then both the employees of the company as well as the implementing agency has an opportunity to enhance their skills.
Right. Thank you so much. We have completely run out of time, and thank you to Apresh and his team for giving me the opportunity to chair this very interesting, insightful, and very, very significantly impactful discussion going forward as we bring and align companies and their spending to objectives that are truly important and noteworthy for the progress of this country. So on that note, Apresh, thank you, and it's back to you.
Thank you very much, Govind. It was an enlightening session moderated by you. And I thank Dr. Garima, Dr. Bhaskar, and Jyotsna to have joined this session. I think this discussion could lead to a forum, one-day forum on CSR impact. We could probably plan someday with you convening this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
With this, we end today's day one of 11th CSR Leadership Summit. We would be joining at 3 p.m. tomorrow. See you there. Thank you very much and good
Thank
night.
you. Thank you, Dr. Bhaskar. Thank you, Dr. Garima. Bye.
Goodbye,
Thank you,
Garima.
Govind, if you're
And
still there.
Govind, great job. Lovely being on the panel with you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chatterjee. Thank you, Jyotsna, and thank you.
Thank you,
Garima. Bye.
Govind.
So when it was really
Thanks,
good.
Suresh. Bye.